Let's see. There it is. Welcome, everybody. This is the Jake Don't Draw. Actually, it's not. This is the Halftone Studio Hour. All right? This is me and Ramon Hurtado are here. We're going to critique your guys' Discord drawings. That's Ramon. Nope, wrong way. That's Ramon. We did a Discord challenge. You guys know the deal already at this point. I know that I'm late, don't draw. Okay. I do know that I'm late, don't draw. But we're doing our best, all right? You guys don't know. You don't know the sacrifices we make for you, including the art challenge that I put out every 2 weeks, all right? This one was a full figure drawing from the cast. We just put out... Man, I wrote a lot for this one. And we have 70... there's like 70-something messages. There's 89 messages. A lot of these are not... individual posts, but we probably got 40, 50 drawings in here, and they're looking incredible. This is like, I know Ramon was saying the other day, super excited about these. Let me run down the challenge real quick. I'll show you what it was, just for those of you who didn't get the time to participate. I posted, let's see, 4 cast references, so these are full figure drawings. I did mine, by the way. 18 by 24 scale, that's what I recommended. Hello, everybody in chat saying hi.
Sorry.
What was that, Ramon?
I did not do mine. Sorry.
Yeah, he's didn't do his homework. Okay, these 4 references here, 2 of our boy Germanicus, I think. I don't even know who that is. Is this like a Roman emperor or something? Do you know, Ramon?
They don't know exactly. Like, they'll call him Germanicus sometimes, but a lot of these things, they're like, I guess it's that guy, but they're not 100% sure. So, Germanicus it is.
Yeah. All right. And then the other 2, I wanted to do a female one. So we have one called Spring Frost by a 19th century sculptor, Sven Thorvaldsen or Thor Svenvaldsen. Do you know his name? I'm butchering this.
Yeah. I'm not going to say it right, but yeah, it's Thorvaldsen, yeah.
Thorvaldsen, okay. And of course, some 19th century references. Now, I expanded this quite a bit in the middle of the week, all right? We opened up our new website, halftonestudio.art, and on our references page, we have a billion references, a little bit over 1,000 or so, of different angles of all of these sculptures and stuff that we had rendered out for you guys. Big thanks to the Discord community for helping out with this, and tons of example photos too, some that Ramon has taken himself from all around the world, 19th century drawings and paintings. So these guys are all free for you on halftonestudio.art, and me and Ramon over here. We made a full course as well too, if you guys want to look into that. But I'm sure if you're watching the stream, you might have already heard about it, so I'm not gonna hit you with it. I want to get right to the critiques, and we can mention it later if we want or something. All right, Ramon, you had a chance to look over everything?
Yes. I got the Discord pulled up. Just to start off, I just wanted to say, like, that is so cool to see. Like, it's so impressive. Like, just the mass drawings in there, like the work that people are putting in and the results that they're getting. Like, it is so fucking cool to see. I'm sorry, am I allowed to curse on here?
Yeah, of course. Yes, we're not. It's not the Roblox stream. We're good.
All right.
Wait, all right. Since someone asked, they said, "Is the sale going on?" Hey, yeah, we do have a launch sale going on. It ends tomorrow. I'm gonna let it run through the day tomorrow and turn it off at night. Yeah, I know, right? It's the full course. It's like 22 hours or whatever. It starts from the beginners and then it goes all the way through a few finished portrait drawings. I can show those drawings that we did. They're somewhere on the website here. So yeah, that's on sale for another day.
Yapping the whole time.
Yeah, it's a lot of me and Ramon yapping. So if you're enjoying this experience, these are the 2 drawings that we did for the final project, basically. But we did a whole lot more than that as well. Oh, love the course so far. Let's go. And we just put in some regional pricing too for those of you in like Brazil or Mexico, or there's a whole bunch of different currencies I posted in my Discord if you want to check that out. It's a better price break for people who can't do the USD. All right. Now it's time.
And we've got subtitles.
Oh yeah, you're right. It's like it has translations into a lot of different languages: French, Spanish, Portuguese.
They're really
Chinese.
Good. I checked the Spanish one. I checked the Portuguese one. I checked the French one. They are really good. They're really, really good. It's actually fairly cool. Easy to follow. So happy we could get that going.
Yeah. All right. Let's hop into some crits. Do you wanna open up, Ramon, with one?
Yeah, let's do it. Yes. Okay. So here, let's share the screen, and let me just open up a new file. And don't mind me, I might be like a little bit of a boomer getting some of this stuff set up.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so we're just gonna take it from the top. Shearzy.
Yeah, it's actually a pretty good one to start
Also,
with.
sorry if I butcher everybody's names. That is probably going to happen. Sorry, it'll probably happen again. All right.
It's really cool too
very
because
cool.
you know I like back in the day, and I think you feel this way too, Ramon. I mean, you've been doing this. Ramon's been studying the 19th century academic stuff like very intently, I think for probably around 10 years or so, but you had interest in it before that.
Yeah, just about.
But like, you know, back in the day when I first started learning in like 2020 or 2021 is when I took Ramon's first class, you know, I felt kind of alone in this type of stuff. You know, if you're like running in local figure drawing circles or whatever, you'll never find anyone that cares about this type of stuff. And it's kind of disheartening. And then it was through, you know, Ramon's community and people taking those classes that I found, you know, a few people around the world that actually did care about this stuff and were grinding out and drawing in this way, using the charcoal and paper stump and appreciating 19th century drawings. And all those people from Ramon's classes, I just got to say, are now like full-time, really, really good artists from around the world. It's pretty cool, you know, like that community that I ran in. And now here on Discord, it's like, you know, it's like I'm not even like, I mean, I talk about this stuff all the time, but people are taking it up on themselves to just start drawing. Like, I'm so surprised at how many people were drawing this way, you know, for this challenge alone. It was really crazy.
You know, I feel like that always happens as a teacher too. Like you know, you go through the journey and people come to you eventually, and you know, I think I see that role, and you can tell me if you feel the same way, you know, in your teaching. But to me, it feels like you're like a guide. You know, it's like a hiking trail, and you're someone who's hiked it before, and so you're like, hey, like the trail gets like a little narrow up ahead. There's some, you know, mudslides ahead, you know, etc. It's not that you know everything, it's just that you've been there before and you can help people to anticipate, you know, a couple of things that might be coming their way that might make things more difficult, and so you can kind of tell them how to plan. But, you know, you throw out like the advice that you have from your experience, from the things that you've seen and the things that you've done. And I think some of it is almost like a message in a bottle. Like you give it out and people can do whatever they want with it. And you hope that they'll apply it, but then when they actually apply it, it's like kind of shocking.
Yeah.
You're like, that thing that actually helped. Like that, you did the thing. I told you to do it, and then you did it, and it's working for you. That's incredible. I mean, that kind of is supposed to be the purpose of teaching, but it's really cool to see it when it happens.
Yeah, it is. And it's like, it's so self-evident too, because like all the people in my Discord, you know, people that I haven't even been like personally instructing, I maybe drop some like advice every, you know, now and then, are already like improving after like a couple months of doing this stuff, like huge improvements. Like all the drawings of this challenge are so good. Like this one's really good too. This person's done a couple of these now.
Yeah, this is great. Just one quick thing I wanted to mention, just while we're on the subject of that.
Yeah.
Obviously, you know, we talk about the 19th century thing a lot, and you know, like this particular drawing, I wouldn't call it a technique. I would call it more like a framework, right?
Yeah.
Because I don't think it's that rigid, right? But the whole point of this is not to like just dig up the past just for its own sake, right? This is not the, you know, just 19th century revival hour just because. You know, one of the reasons why I have an interest in this is that this is a case study. You know, it's in this one particular time, you know, in, you know, like world history, like all of these influences and all of these things that people had tried in terms of drawing, like to be able to create like a finished, full value naturalistic figure. People had tried it in a bunch of different ways in a bunch of different countries across centuries, and all of that was put together in France, and it just happened to be in France. You know, France was just kind of primed for it. It could have happened somewhere else, but it happened to happen in France. And they just combined the most common sense, principles from all these different approaches, and they taught it to the largest number of people that have ever, I think, had access to it, at least in that particular way. And in the 19th century, you just see more and more people across different countries, different backgrounds and everything, having access to this training. And the thing about the training that's great is that it just doesn't have anything that you don't need, right? It just gives you these, it's made to make you not a perfectionist. It's made to be something that you can learn and then you can use, not something that uses you. It works for you. It's this thing that allows you to like be playful and to like enjoy drawing. And yeah, there's some discipline in it. There are some aspects that are a little bit more regimented, but it's literally the minimum amount that you would need so that you can just kind of free up after the fact and actually make what you want to make. And so I think that's the real value in it, is that it just happens to be the best example of when people tried to do this thing and they did it in probably like the most successful way that there's ever been. Who knows, maybe something will come along eventually, but I think this is probably about as good as it gets. And it allows you to just, it works. You can learn it relatively fast, and then you can just forget about it and just make whatever the hell you want, which is actually the point. It's not to get stuck in training. You got to move on.
Yeah. And it's pretty cool too, because like, you said like a lot of people learned this stuff. It was people from, I mean, I'm not going to say that France in the 19th century was some sort of multicultural paradise, but it was people from all around the world, at least a lot of the world. And like you see the most random things. There's like people in Japan now that do this sort of like kind of academic like cast drawing. There's a somewhat style of academic drawing and Chinese art. Some of the Russian stuff comes from here, but also their own stuff from all around. And it's really interesting. You trace the roots of this stuff, and it all kind of like connects back to the French stuff. I think it's really fun to see how it's evolved, and it shows too that it's like it's not super rigid.
Yeah, and really any number of countries around the world you can find what are basically French academic drawings, like academic drawings that were done in France, but by people who were not from France. And of course, the 19th century had its fair share of problems, and the training wasn't equally accessible to everyone. But I think that's where, that's our job now, and that's where the internet comes in, is that we can actually, keep that going, the best aspects of that going, and make it available for even more people that wouldn't have had access to it back then. So anyway.
Yeah.
All right, shall we?
Let's start picking away at this first one.
Okay, so first of all, thank you for including the progression. This is really great to see. This is great. Like the way that you're approaching it, I think is like really clear. Obviously, you're putting in your plumb line, you're going through with your measurements, and lo and behold, the system works. The proportions look pretty damn good at the end of that. Here, let me pull up the reference. Actually, Jay, can you send me the reference?
Yeah.
Sorry, otherwise I'm going to take like a million years to find it.
Yeah, let me see. You guys
I'll pull up the first one. I'll pull up.
Yeah, I got a reference for you. I'm going to just switch to my face. I'm going to DM it to you on Discord. Right,
okay.
Cool. You can open it on Discord, and when you're good, I'll
Okay. Got it. Thank you. Okay, got it right here. Okay, I'll probably have to grab the other ones a little bit later too. Okay, so let's just set this up here. What's really cool is that like after you do this a couple of times, like you set up your plumb line, you measure the number of heads, or whatever unit of measurement you're using, which again in this case the head makes the most sense. Proportions are just not going to be like a huge problem for you. Like everyone's always going to have like little quirks, in terms of that stuff. But it's at least not going to, you're not going to make like the legs like 5 times too long or something, you know? And if you ever do, it won't be because of like lack of skill or something. It'll be just because you were like not paying attention or whatever. So you'll know how to fix it. It's not, you know, once you kind of lock in on this, you know, again, not everything will be perfect or whatever, but this is not going to be like some huge mystery for you, you know, which is, I think, is already starting to happen here, which is great. Okay, so let's do the base here. All right. Okay, so I'm just looking around just to see how things are looking here. Okay, so a couple of important things here. You know, the reason why you put in the plumb line is to have a way to compare, you know, the very top of the figure to the very bottom of the figure, right? Otherwise, you know, we would probably start working here, and then here, and then here, and then here, and then here. And by the time you get here, you forgot about what was up there, right? And so drawing is all about comparison and, you know, kind of putting all these elements together and orchestrating them, and not one single element, you know, taking up too much of your attention. It's the whole thing. Okay, so a couple like quick things here. You know, when you're starting out the drawing like this, just at this stage, like, don't worry too much about like getting like these little bumps like this. You did actually a really good job on it.
It's actually
just not
very
something
nicely
that
simplified. Yeah.
Yeah, like every time you get a chance to make it easy on yourself, just do that. You know, because for example, you know, look, like the ins and outs right here. If you try to focus on them too soon, you're gonna overstate them. Whereas like if you look over here on the original, it's almost straight. And it's not quite straight, but it's...
That's another use for the plumb line too, if you drop it from the outside of the hip. Like if you just do that with Photoshop, you'll see actually like it's not really all that curved.
It's not like
bumps.
And that's why you don't want to focus on small stuff too early, because again, these are, imagine that this is like the, imagine that you're drawing like the ocean or something, right? Like, and you have the water level, and then you have the waves on top of the water level, or like a pond or something, right? So this base guideline, that is the water level, and then these small little bumps coming in and out of it, those are the waves. So get the water level first, and then get the little waves, because, you know, the water level matters more than the waves do. And you can do that for everything. That's why we simplify values too, you know, etc. Just get rid of the noise, you know, and focus on what the big thing is. It's, again, you're doing a really good job here. I would just, you know, take it easy on yourself, you know, just give yourself less work. If instead of having like 1, 2, 3, 4 angle breaks, that's pretty good simplification. What if we just do one? Could we do one? Make it a game. Make it a game. Could we do one? And it doesn't have to be 100% straight. You can curve it a little bit. You can cheat it a little bit. It doesn't just the thing you don't want to do at first is like some wacky like curve like that, because that'll just make it harder to rein it in. But you don't have to have like perfectly straight lines every time. It can be a little bit of an arc, and that's fine. Okay. One thing here is just the head. Don't worry as much about breaking down these angles so early. What I would try to do is imagine that the head, pardon the analogy, but imagine that the head is like on a skewer. Imagine that there's like something running through the head, like a little axis. And so just try to get the direction of it more so than anything else. And you can use any part of the head to help you with that. You can draw like the middle of it, or you can draw the outside of the neck, or you can draw the outside here. But whatever it is, you know, just focus on getting this whole thing, this overall thing, to turn the way you need it to tilt the way you need it to. So, you know, getting that in is going to be helpful. You did a great job on getting these shoulders here. That movement is really nice. Here, one thing is you want to be careful that, you know, when you drop your plumb line, which here you have it like just a little bit off to the side, like right about here. Okay. Look at this center line here for the torso. Obviously here you can see where it ends at the crotch. You know, it's a little bit hidden up here because of the arms. But if you can't see it through here, just imagine that it has to link up to like the top of the head. So even if you can't see it that well through here, just imagine what it would take, how it would have to go for it to join up here. And so instead of following this line bit by bit by bit by bit, get one extreme and see where you have to aim it to, right? And then you can like connect the dots more effectively. And that'll just get it so that your torso is not veering off this way, but that yes, it's going this way here, but here it's starting to already, move in this direction. So that's something that I would keep in mind. Again, you did a really good job. These are just like little tips to kind of, make it easier the next time and the next time after that. Again, make it a game. Make it a game. Because those observations that we just made about the tilt of the head and all that, you got that over here, right? But that means that because it wasn't as clear in the beginning, then you had to do like a bit of redrawing and a bit of refining to get it over here. So what'll happen is the more you do these drawings, the more you'll know what to do in the beginning, because it's the things that when you do a full drawing, you're like, ah, man, I wish I had done this at the start. Like, I wish I'd gotten the tilt of the head so I don't have to deal with it later. And then you'll do that for the next drawing. That's really the point there. Okay, so other than that, the finished one, I think this is looking good. You're showing really good value control here. The application is nice. It's pretty well controlled. One thing I would say is, squint down a little more and try to transition some of these areas. So here, obviously there's going to be a bunch of halftones, a bunch of like stuff or whatever, but try to look for kind of bigger chunks, right? So, okay, yeah, there's the shadow here, right? This plane is in shadow. It's this whole big chunk. Again, don't think of it as a shape. Think of it as a plane, like an actual side of a 3D object. And then you're going to get your halftones here, right? Your major halftones. If you squint down, you can probably get that like all the way through there, right? So it's like this, this chunk is this plane, this chunk is the halftone plane, and this chunk is maybe the plane that's in the lights, okay? And the same would apply here, right? Where it's like, you're not just going to darken just this little margin here. If you squint down, this entire plane, this entire area is getting darker. All of this is coming in, right? This goes pretty straight, and then this goes in like that. And so what I think would be helpful, when you're working over here, is try to think of those like broader turns. And so when you use the stump, maybe get like that whole area, right? Obviously here I'm going to make it a little darker. I'm going to exaggerate just so you can see what I mean. You can make it more subtle, as you're working. But try to go for like a bigger chunk like that. Don't feel like you only have to like tickle around the edges of the shadow. Like you can actually bring this in a little bit more like that. And that gives you that like bonk, 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 sort of big turn there. And the same here, right? You don't have to just kind of like tickle it around the edges here. You can take, this entire halftone here. And here, we'll color pick off of this. And you can spread that through that whole area like that, just to make that whole area come in. And you don't even have to stop it. You can go all the way down to the crotch, right? If the hips are going that way too, like, all right, fine, group them together. Give yourself less to do, right? What you're trying to do here is try to get like, boom, this comes out, boom, this comes in, boom, this comes out again, boom, this comes out again. This goes bump, bump, bump. And so this is something that, you think of as something very physical, very, very tactile, sculptural drawing, as Jake would put it. But yeah, you're doing great. That's what I would focus on.
Someone said like 3 value groups on the thigh. One part of that is like, you don't like necessarily have to be like, okay, I do one value and then I put in, this next value and then I put in this. It's a pretty strong way to think. But actually 3 values is really like almost like 95% of what you need. Like it is incredible how far you can push, really even 2 values, but especially 3. It's pretty amazing what you can do with that, especially too if you just like, instead of making it like a super hard edge, really like defined chunk, you just pull the edge of one value into the next just a little bit. You don't got to airbrush the hell out of it, but really you can do a lot with 3, because 3 is like, it's one plane that's facing the brightest light, it's one plane that's in halftone, and then it's one plane that's in shadow. Right, and that's pretty much as much as you need to describe some sort of curvature. If you only have 2, then you have the hard edge of a box. As soon as you get past 3, you start to describe like pretty complex stuff, and it gets more and more and more diminishing in how in how much form you're describing, right? Every time you add more values, you're describing like less smaller and smaller changes. So 3 is really, it's spectacular. You know, when you look at painters, really great 19th century painters, and people like Sargent are really great to look at too, for this type of stuff, because he's so good at simplifying. You really rarely see more than 3 there. So definitely, I think that's like a nice thing to look for. With the beginners, I always recommend like just get good at like laying in the basic body with decent proportions and just putting in a shadow. But you're going to get bored of that. You're going to want to try to push, and it's totally okay to do that. And I think that's like a next step. And still, even in my drawings, I'm always trying to like make 3 work as much as I can for me before I go crazy, but maybe a little bit more casually and not so rigidly.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like that's and the thing is, like, you don't have to think of things like super literally. Like 3 is a good balance, not because like 3 is like magic or whatever, but it's like it starts to get you like a bit of the curvature. If you squint down, it's like, it's not that it's 3 values exactly, it's like 3 value families. It's like you can have little variations inside of that, but they're like mostly gonna be, like everything in here is gonna be more similar to each other than it will be to the things over here. And yeah, I completely agree. Like focusing on just like the big picture stuff, like getting the big proportions, the big movement, the big character, the big values, you get so much out of that. And then everything else is just like a little sprinkling on top. It's like, it's like cooking, right? Like if you're cooking a piece of chicken, the most important thing is that you don't under or overcook it. The time that you spend just the chicken in the fire, and to get that to like a reasonable point, that matters way more than whatever, spices or whatever weird shit you add to it afterwards. And there's no amount of that stuff that you can add that would fix chicken that's like, really dry, or that's like, severely undercooked, right? So the way that I see it is, do less, do it better, right? Do fewer things. Don't bog yourself down. Always try to find fewer things to do, but see if you can, work with it a little bit more, squeeze more out of it each time.
Yeah.
In here, I'll go ahead and save these.
Sure. Yeah, I can grab the next person. Let me move over to here.
Should I unshare my screen? Or?
No, you're good. You can stay just like that.
Okay, cool.
You have your camera messed up. How did I do that? Fix your camera real quick. Sweet. Okay, this one I skipped over a couple, Ramon, so you can grab the. I think it's sure. Is it Malik or Mark? He was in a class with us. Mark, you can grab Mark. He was in a class with us a few months ago, which will be fun.
Okay.
I
cool.
grabbed Michael's drawing. Let's see. Michael gave us a really nice process shots through it. Let me pull that up here. Give us some nice process, and I'd say this is like pretty much like spot on, academic technique. If you're gonna call it technique, I know Ramon doesn't like to use the word technique, and I totally understand why, because people get like really obsessed that like it's one specific way of doing something, but this is a really nice example of exactly kind of how this process works. And yeah, it turned out great. I know Michael's been grinding these, he's probably done at least 3 or 4 or so over the past few months. And this one's, they've been really steady progress. It's really, really incredible how far you can go in just a couple months doing this type of stuff. So let's pull this over here. $14 or $15, he said. Okay, he hasn't sent most of them in the Discord, unless I missed a few. Jeez. So that makes sense why he's making a lot of progress. More or less. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, great job. Definitely like really, really steady progress. Kind of the type of stuff that I was seeing. By the way, for the people who aren't super informed, this type of this drawing stuff that we really like from the 19th century. I'll pull this up. We have a bunch of example drawings in here. Here's a similar, that one's Greek. I think we have, is there a Germanicus drawing? Yeah, we definitely have one. Yeah, here we go. So here's a drawing from the French Academy at the same time, and they used to do these in 12 hours. The paper size is about A2, so 18 by 24. Ramon, why did the French use 18 by 24? That's not a standard centimeter measurement. It's like, do you know?
Yeah, it's about like 63 by 48 centimeters. I'm not sure. I think it was a standard size sheet. It's called different things. So like a sheet that size was called an imperial size sheet for a while. I think it can also be called like raison, but again, why that is, I'm not 100% sure. You know, I will report back.
Okay. It's always puzzled me. It's like 18 by 24 is like it's like an American, unit, but in centimeters, it's so random. Like I don't understand.
It's a little bigger than 18 by 24, like officially.
Yeah,
like,
the one I have is
again
18 and a half by 24.
Yeah, it's exactly. 18 and a half by 24 and a half. Yeah, like it's but again, the thing is like, okay, France might be like on like, like metric measurements and stuff like that now, but back then when like, paper was being developed, I don't think it was as standard as it is now.
Oh,
so,
okay.
It's, so who knows what it's probably based on the size of some dude's foot or something, you know what I mean? It's like, it could be like literally anything.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Sorry. Let me, I'll stop, I'll stop divulging into tangents so we can get to your guys' crits. So this is a 18 by 24, give or take, half an inch drawing from the French Academy, done by a man named Lacoste, who's a student of. Sorry, it's not from the École. Maybe this one was from the École. Actually, it says that he is a student of Bouguereau and Robert Fleury. Mm-hmm. So probably might have been a École, which is, I'm going to simplify here a little bit. I'm just going to call it the French Academy. Technically, there's some differences there, but he probably was maybe a student there on the side, but either way, this was done in a private school, and these were done in 12 hours from these big casts of these Greek sculptures. Cast is just a plaster copy of the original Greek sculptures, and yeah, I mean, it's just a pretty, 12 hours to some people who maybe aren't super into the academic world, it might seem like a really long amount of time. But at that scale and at this level of accuracy that these guys are able to get, it's really pretty spectacular. It's ruthlessly efficient. And the cool thing is when you get up close to some of this stuff, do I have the Poussaus in here? I definitely do. Yeah, this one. I love this one. You get real close into this stuff, and what's really fun about it is all these guys tackle these problems in different ways. Poussau is really sculptural. He really hacks the hell out of this thing with a pretty tough, eraser that's like kind of carving into it deep. So, maybe it was the rubber stump that he was using. They used to use rubber stumps to erase, or it was just a really hard kneaded eraser. Maybe it was a cold day or something, but he really hacks into this stuff and carves it out. Others are, really expressive with this stuff. This is a pretty expressive one. You get in close and they're just so much fun to look at, and you realize how minimal they are and how much they're able to do with so little. And these are the ideas that we really like, because they stand in a really nice contrast to, one is you have the university world, right? I went to an art university, state university, and at that university, we did 5-minute, 10-minute, 20-minute poses. Maybe we did a couple 2-hour-long poses, but they're not going to talk about plumb line, how to measure, how to compare things. They're not going to talk about values and how light works. None of that stuff exists to a lot of the modern university world. And then it also stands in the middle compared to, on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, the fine art atelier world, which does very commonly now around 60-hour-long figure poses. Me and Ramon were at Lime Academy last month or so, and they said their longest pose is about 75 hours for one drawing, and I don't think they're 18 by 24. They might even be a little bit smaller. It might be 18 by 24. But either way,
about 16 by 20.
Yeah, 16 by 20, is that what you said?
Some of them look like that, yeah.
Yeah, so maybe even a little bit smaller. So I think it's really beautiful, and you know what we were saying earlier about how this stuff kind of, it's just about giving you the tools to do whatever you want with art. And it's just nice because all these guys went on to do really cool stuff. They didn't just draw, you know, naked old people for the rest of their life. They became, you know, some of the most incredible artists of all time, and they became the modernists too. Like Gustav Klimt was a spectacular, honestly, like an insanely good academic artist.
Yeah.
And then he became like a crazy modernist, and he also had like 10 wives. So you could do anything with this, you know, whatever you dream of. Let's take a look at this one here. So yeah, really good job, Michael. I really like the progress you're making on this. I think, you know, this is a nice finish. I want to take a look at your process a little bit more over here. 70 hours is crazy. It's pretty crazy, especially too because you're not using charcoal or anything like that. That's why it takes so long. You know, these schools, they sharpen out their graphite really long, and they get this longer point on their graphite. They sharpen it out to a really tiny point, and then they actually do. And this is what I was talking about on my stream. If you guys didn't see it the other week, I was talking about Pointer's essays about the English, and the English were doing this back then. He was kind of critiquing their education system for basically allowing people to spend months on these cast drawings, and they would spend. But again, people do this at these schools too with the cast drawings. Since it's not from life, there's nothing holding you back from spending 100, 200 hours on it, which is pretty common. And the English were doing that back in the day. They do what's called stippling, where they basically just sharpen out their pencils so fine that they get into the individual grains of the paper and they make it perfectly black, perfectly filled in, perfectly gradated. Where as opposed to like this French stuff, it's on this like thick laid paper, which is this kind of rib texture paper. Michael's probably using it here. I think, yeah, he is, but it's hard to tell. I think he's got Fabriano. I wonder which one he's using actually. Some sort of Fabriano, like English paper or something. So the thing with this process, I think, yeah, it looks good. What I've noticed from Michael is there's like a really strong tendency to kind of search for that accuracy using that, like, these straight lines, which is good. The plumb line is in there and counted out heads, which is really nice. We drop that vertical plumb line and mark out how many head heights the figure is. That we count off of it. And, even, let me think here. Finding these big straight simplifications, like Ramon said, is great. I think that you're at a point now where you'd improve the most by letting go of some of these super straight simplifications, or actually, this is nice, but, taking your time to think about where the beginning and the ends of these lines are going to be, think about how the plumb line compares to it, and try to make, look for things, how one piece, one line flows into another line, how rhythms are created across the body. That does relate to muscles and bones, but you don't need to know every piece of anatomy to do it. It helps to learn some anatomy, but looking at how things weave into each other and making more confident rhythmic drawings, I think will really help improve the stiffness of this. You did get into a nice finish here, but I think you can make your life a lot easier in those early stages. So here, let me draw over so I can show what I'm talking about. I'm back over here. Fabriano design hot press. Interesting. I haven't won that one. I had a guy from Angel Academy who spent 5 terms on the same still life painting. Yeah, that's those Angel Academy still lifes are like insane. But the reason why they're insane is because they take so long. Yeah. So you got a lot of that. You brought a lot of that back in the final one, actually. I think you did a nice job. You did a really nice job with this stuff. I think you can find it earlier. I think you can find it a lot earlier. Let me grab one of these. Yeah, so we have kind of some landmarks that are important. We have like the pit of the neck, the bottom of the rib cage over here. bottom of the rib cage. Pit of the crotch is a nice landmark. You can look at how a plumb line aligns off of these two. I think it does align pretty closely on the plumb line. Let me make a new layer here. Yeah, so we'll say that's where the pit of the crotch is. That's what this. And then this, I can actually draw right over the top here. A little bit to the side. So yeah, that's probably pretty good. So our rib cage kind of projects off like this. And it comes out pretty far, and then it pulls back in into here. And same thing too, like we're pulling this neck down from behind the head. This is connecting up to the back of the head. It's pulling out to our shoulder. It's just cutting inwards. It's overlapping with this arm, which again is going to cut on top. Pulling off of that connection into the chest. Wrapping around the torso. Being a little bit tight here. I want to bring this out a little bit more. And then this rib cage is coming out from underneath, pulling, I'm kind of imagining where this line is going to. It's kind of headed towards this neck, towards this trapezius area, or the shoulders. And then that makes sense, right? Your rib cage connects to your neck, right? That's the top, the hole at the top. So pulls down and out. And we find ourselves at the edge of the rib cage here. This is our landmark, and we can verify our accuracy by, checking the angle like this. And then from here, we pull out from there and connect in. It's not going to wind up looking all that different, but if you think about how things kind of rhythmically align with each other, and also too, you can now consider, like, is this distance, is this width the same as this? Just while drawing and thinking about really simply, I'm feeling like we're a little bit skinny here, maybe. And I felt like we were a little bit skinny over here, too, while I was working on that. So maybe we just need a little bit more space over here. The static measuring, like the head heights and stuff, it gets you pretty close. It gets you like 90% of the way there. But then you do have to feel your way around the body. And that's hard. But working in a way, I want to change my brush here. There we go. Working in a way that allows you a little bit of flexibility, so you're like, this just feels a little bit narrow. Like, I'm just going to push this out just a little bit. That's what gives you the ability to really kind of take the flow of these things up a notch. Gonna pull into here, and then we're wrapping around over here. We're coming out into the arm, and it's gonna be small stuff. Maybe even still a little bit skinny, but moving in the right direction. We come out, we come down, kind of make that a little bit more rhythmic. I sync stuff up from side to side. I try not to, lately, this is just what I've been thinking. I try not to draw a ton of construction lines inside of the body. I think if you're, if you need it, you need it. But it's something that you should try to keep as simple as possible, and just look for those big connections like I'm talking about. Yeah, I still think we're a little bit skinny on that side. And especially through the legs too. It's like, if you know where the start of this leg is, here's our start of the leg. Here's our bottom of the leg. Well, you can check a plumb line. It's probably going to be like right here, right? It's going to come in and out and over, but like Ramon said, like, why not just do it in one line? And that line doesn't have to be perfectly straight. Like, where's it coming from? Where's it going to? And maybe what should I ignore? There's our foot.
Embrace the laziest part of yourself.
Yeah, that's 100% it.
That's the one.
My favorite Ramon quote ever is, what is it? I always, while drawing, I try to keep my head as empty as possible.
Just while doing all things, yeah.
So we need to be serving bimbo.
Every day. Like yeah. Yeah, the more himbo or bimbofy yourself, the better, honestly. You'll be happier, you'll live longer. Your drawings will thank you. More fun to be around.
Yeah, so work out, think about where these lines are going to on the other side of the body, where they're coming from, where they're wrapping around from, and how they wedge and insert themselves into each other. I think you can improve your flow of that a lot better and stop, it's always going to be somewhat blocky. You're always going to be measuring, like straight lines are important. There's no perfect balance. You're going to find it somewhere. But just always thinking about that level of simplicity. Let me give you a quick critique on the actual rendering of it. I know I spent a lot of time here. By the way, guys, we're going for about 3 hours or so. Ramon's got an out around then. So we're going for about 3 hours or so and just get to as many as we can. And I might stick around a little bit longer after that, so we'll see. Where's my pencil? There we go. Okay, so with this, I think this is really good improvement because I've seen in the past that you have been doing these cast drawings and you've been mostly working on getting those proportions. I think this is the first time I've seen you move on the inside of the body and try some of that rendering, which is really nice. So, I would say one thing that you can really, keep thinking about is if you see something that's a plane, if you see something that it almost feels opposite to what I just said, but you got to call it like you see it. This is what I've learned from looking at 19th century drawings. If you see, a hard transition, if you see a plane, knock that in super hard. I don't mean make it super dark. And then, spend less time in the subtle areas, right? So if we think about the rhythm of the pecs across the chest here, this is the front of the chest. It's like a rib cage somewhere in here, right? We're wrapping around that. We basically have this shield, or this was from like Steve Houston actually forever ago. Our arms are kind of like a towel rack, and then our chest and our shoulders and our shoulder muscles and a little bit of our back, our traps, that's kind of the towel. So we have like this towel rack here of our arm that hangs down, and then our chest and shoulders comes up and over and wraps around that towel rack. So we're wrapping around here, and what we see is like as we wrap around that, this guy's got big boobies on the underside of that chest. It's darker because it's moving down and around. So like all we have to do first is establish the big plane, just like this, right? Establish the big plane. And then we don't have to care quite as much. Like we can leave this type of stuff for later. Same thing here. It's just like some bigger planes that we can get to and check our values with first. And we can leave the dessert for ourselves to eat later. And then just keep comparing those values back. Keep comparing everything back to your darkest point and your lightest point. Is this the right value compared to the, pretty much, black kind of inside of here? Yeah, it's probably pretty decent. We have this top of the ribcage is getting a little bit of light. We have this sort of shelf here. If I squint my eyes, yeah, there's a little transition in here, but I don't think we've kind of earned it yet, so I'm not going to try super hard. If I squint my eyes, I see that the whole left side of the body is like a little bit darker. Maybe we can push some of that into here. If I squint my eyes, I see the top of the bicep is pretty light. And really, just because it's against black doesn't mean if I look at this value on the inside here, right, like that's a lot darker than the light up here. All right, so that's going to get in there. And then, I'm going to call this like I see it and say, hey, this is like, it's not quite black, but it's close enough to black that I can put it in. And I don't really have to worry about like erasing it because it's close enough to black that it's fine that I can't erase it all the way back to white if I put it in dark. I can still erase it a little bit, make it lighter if I need to later. But I just want to call it, nice and simple for now. And yeah, I will move on here because I've spent a long time with this stuff. Let me look at the chat. Make sure you didn't ask any questions. Okay, cool.
JDD lover.
Oh no, don't acknowledge him. He's a staple in the Discord. Biggest fan.
Is it just you?
Yeah, that's
you have another computer?
Oh, wait, no, you're asking. You're not asking if JDD is me. You're asking if it's also just me. No. JDD is not me. I was talking. You saw my hands. Both hands were active. Okay, it couldn't have been me.
You're just glazing yourself up like in the Discord.
I got an AI. I offloaded the work to AI.
You just have a Jake bot that's just like spewing compliments.
It's just a little bit too much focus on details in here. If you really squint down, like all this is basically white. So just leave it be. Save yourself the work for other areas. We're pushing him pretty dark in here too, so. Anyways, yeah, big plane changes. I'm gonna move on here. You got one loaded up, Ramon?
If anybody can hear that yowling. What's that?
I don't hear it. Meatball's in the background, going crazy.
Okay. Meatball's are meowing. He's
always Meatball, never Cooper.
Cooper's, well, no, they switch off. They work in shifts to keep me extremely busy. Someone's asking how my kitties are doing today. They're doing fine. They live in the lap of luxury. How am I doing actually? That's
yeah, it's always
they're
how
doing
the
fine.
kitties.
Emily says, can we see the kitties? They'll come around. They're in the other room right now, I think. Oh, Cooper's asleep Cooper's in there somewhere. Somewhere in there. He's asleep right under there. You guys will see him. They'll pop up.
Yeah, look him around.
All right.
Cool. You wanna tag team?
Yeah. So what I did is I actually lined up with like 5, and I just like speed run.
Oh hell yeah. Probably a good idea.
Through a few, just so we don't. Yeah. So let's do it in chunks. So first we have Marek. Marek, I know you. All right. Let's go ahead and take a look. Good to see you in there. And I pulled up the process pics too. Thank you for including those. This looks great. This is really, really beautiful. Also, it's funny. I didn't realize it was digital at first.
Oh, really?
I think you and I talked about that before, like just having like some kind of way of simulating some of the aspects of traditional media. Just for everybody else, like one of the ways that is useful is using the that like ribbed laid paper. You don't just use it just to use it, right? You use it because it does certain things, and one of the important things it does is it diffuses the image, like it softens what you do. So if you put down a bit of charcoal or something with a stump, it's not going to be super sharp, which is good for you because if you are trying to make work that's like fairly realistic, you cannot have everything sharp actually, right? So instead of you having to go through on smooth paper and manually soften everything, the paper just does it for you, which saves you a lot of time. Now digitally, obviously, that's a little different, and so Marek has found a solution around that. So Rampaging Moose says round brush with a noise layer on top is real nice to stop you from zooming in. Oh, that's great. Yeah,
that's cool.
That's actually a really important point too. It's like you have to evaluate the stuff from far away. if you zoom in too much, if you get like too sort of, you know, um, if you get too caught up in like the small little like inconsequential aspects of it, you're gonna get lost. Like that's always how it happens. And so, that's an important thing to keep in mind. Okay, so looking overall, let's start from the lay-in, just take a look here. Yeah, beautiful. The movement is really nice. I think that's, expressed really well. It's looking cool here. I love the sway of the hips. I think that's really well worked out. And this is really nice too, actually, just how simplified you're keeping this. Yeah, a couple little things. So I think we can be a little bit more clear about where we map out this stuff like on the knee. So just squint down a little bit more. And again, part of what that'll do is you see there's a little bit of a drift that's happening here. Like this is starting to get like, a little bit, more almost like inflated. Whereas here it's like, it's pretty straight. Like, a lot of life is sort of like more subtle than we think. Like it's sort of, we don't always have to like pop everything out a whole lot. You can get away with doing a lot less than you think, which is how all this stuff is possible, because it's actually less work, than you might imagine at first. So yeah, let's go ahead and let's just tighten that up, okay? You do have this going on here, but that's just the shadow, right? So anyway, here, I wouldn't do too much. I would just like, get this in here, fill this in. I wouldn't even separate this out too much just yet. We can take care of that later. Basically, if it's hard to do, or like you start to feel overwhelmed, like you're stacking up too many things to do not do it yet. That is your cue, okay? You will get around to whatever the difficult things are, but do whatever's easiest, then do the next easiest thing, then do the next easiest thing, and then before you know it, you'll be done, But let the difficulties assert themselves kind of on their own, Don't make life harder for yourself. Life does that without your help. So, your job is to make things easier, because that's the thing that doesn't happen automatically. So here I would just say, bump, bump, just close that up. Okay, don't worry too much about some of like the smaller little bits here. This is good here. Do you need this right here? Oh, right there? I'd say probably not. I would probably just go straight like that, bring it in. And then when you're, if you want to have an indication of how this wraps around, like here, don't focus so much on like that little, shadow, form of the shadow there. I would say focus more on like just giving yourself a little marker that, just wraps around, like even just with like a little line, just something that shows this is wrapping around. But even that you might not need, I would probably keep it to just like this, over here. Just fill that in. And I would just, give it the old double tap, like right here and maybe right there, and then call it a day. The double tap is what I call these like little indications that if you put in just one line, it would probably look too graphic. But if you put in like, two little things like tap, tap like that, then, it sort of, it softens it from a distance. It doesn't look so, quite so sharp. So anyway. Doesn't really matter what it looks like up close. It's just, what matters is how it looks from a distance. Here, for the face, one thing I would say is I would probably not go that far into it at this point, because it's going to make you like overstate, things like this and like make that reflected light like a little too strong. I think the face is getting a little too big, not by much, but if we look at the angle formed by like this part of the brow right here and then into the shoulder, like even just like this little space right here. And if we look at it over here, I think this is starting to straighten out. Like this is starting to like get a little straighter like that. And this gap feels like it's starting to get a little bit bigger. And that's the thing. If you get too stuck on an area too early, you're gonna make it like balloon out in size. And so normally it wouldn't be that big of an issue, but the face is such like a critical thing that, everyone's brain is like hardwired to care about, that I would just keep that in mind. So here, let's see if we can just make this a tiny bit smaller. Tilt this a little more. Face a little smaller here. Maybe not too much smaller, actually. Maybe it was mostly just the tilt. Something like that. It'll feel like it fits in a little bit better. And then what I would focus more energy on here, Mark, is getting the sense that, you're seeing like the top of the head and then you're seeing the front of the head, right? And so any indication that you can give that that's the case, maybe even like, okay, this, feel that neck out a little bit more. Here, give us a little bit more of the character here, not just like sort of round, but like this kind of cuts in a little bit. And this, in and out, I probably wouldn't do all that. Like that's two things. I feel like you can just do one thing here. Just treat the hair like a little helmet, and just one shot there. This stuff here, really try to wrap this around, really try to feel how this is going over the form here. And I think this little spot right there, this little chunk of the hair, is going to be important for us just because it gives us, along with this, an indication that this is, the top of the head and that it's turning. So anyway, I would do that and then just reduce the contrast here. Yes, there's a difference, but it is not that big. Same in the lips, reflected light. Yes, there's a difference, but it's not that big. And, yes, there's a thing here, but it's not that dark. So, just do less, just do less, make your life easier. So, okay. I would say that in the final, here, just be careful of little things like this, where it's like, it starts to get a little too sharp where it fits in. Like, oops, let me move that. Like here. Oh, don't have the right, sorry, I am struggling with Photoshop. There we go. So yeah, like this, like this in here, like that stuff doesn't have to be that sharp. Again, if you squint down, like this doesn't have to be that sharp right there either. Even this, doesn't have to be like super, super sharp. And, like watch the contrast like on this arm. Like I know you want to separate it out, but like going from this light to this dark here, that's just not quite what's happening here. Like it's not as strong. So when you see that the difference is subtle, like try to understate it first and only keep adding to it as needed, right? So look at the, make this assessment, like look overall, look at the area, and you're like, oh, this is mostly the same. Okay, then make it the same. And every time you add a difference, pretend that it costs you money. Pretend that it costs you like $20 to add a new value. Not something that you can't afford, but something that you're gonna have to think twice about, right? Because you can't keep doing that everywhere. And that's how you should think of it. My friend Devin and I talk about this as like a value budget, You do not have unlimited funds, and so you want to be very careful about where you spend it. Same here, right? Like this light here, is a little too strong compared to this. If we squint down, and same for this bump here on the olecranon, the actual elbow. I forgot the word for elbow. And the actual elbow.
Sometimes I'm trying not
sure.
to say the actual anatomy term because I'm trying not to be super wordy, but then I can't remember anything else or the other way around. It's so annoying.
Yeah. Someone says, could you turn the music down a bit?
I got you.
That's not music. That's just the sweet sounds of... Is there music playing?
Yeah, for the stream.
Oh, I had no idea, actually. Okay, yeah, so here, again, knock that down, because that will make it seem like she has, just these, super, huge, flexor muscles here, So I, knock that back a little bit. Again, the elbow, if you have that much contrast, it's gonna look a little, lumpy. And so here, just, knock that back. Again, do a little less. Here... Again, group that together a little more. The breast doesn't have to separate that much. Even here, her abs are not that cut out. The most important thing is just the going across. The fact that this entire area goes in to some degree and how it fits over this, which you express really clearly, do that. You don't need to like, carve this out more than it actually is. Because, when we do these are studies, right? So the only goal of these are target practice. You were just trying to get it to match what you're seeing, not as like some kind of ultimate goal in art, but this is like your chance to test yourself to see if you can figure out what you're looking at. And so making actual art is different, right? There you get to modify whatever you want. With a study, you're going to learn more if you just try to match it, just try to keep up with what's happening. Here, yes, there's a light here, but it's not quite that strong, or at least it doesn't contrast that much with this halftone. If you squint down, the more important bit is actually that, this top plane here is actually relatively light compared to the hips. And so how this gets lighter against the hips, how that fits into this area of the hips, that's infinitely more important. So we'll get that. We'll get this. Here for like the crotch and stuff, again, we probably don't have to go that dark. Probably want to focus a little bit more on like how this leg like fits in around this. And again, if we overstate that, it's just, it's sort of going to draw too much attention. And that's the whole thing with like everything here. It's like you only want it to call out as much attention as needed and then no more. Okay, so this through here. Okay, so when you get to the feet, again, in terms of like the small scale stuff, like the angle matching and all that, you're doing a really good job. But one thing that you want to preserve is, again, you don't want to tighten up too much when you get to that. The feet, which you can see here, have this quality of like, they flare out in a way, right? And they flare out here because, people are heavy. Our bodies, are usually at least like 100 pounds or something. That's a lot of weight to put, on these, on our feet on like such a small point. And so what happens is we have these pads under our feet and they basically expand when you put weight on them, right? And so for instance, like, it's like if you have like, let's say you have the ground here and you have a little lump of clay just touching the ground, but there's no weight on it. When you put weight on it, that little lump of clay is going to expand. It's going to, flare out like that. And that's what the feet are doing. And the more you squish it, the more weight you put on it, the more it's going to, pancake out. And so that's something that you want to preserve here. You want to think of, how this is coming in from these tendons that control the toes and how this is all widening out, how this is all flaring out, boom, 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 like little violin strings that go to this like wider area here, okay? And so when you work over here, that's something that you want to keep in mind, like the, more than any one toe, more than any of that, just get the big flare and don't swing it out, really like imagine that you're going to keep going. Oops, that you're going to keep going with this. Like it's one of those like, if you ever seen, the sort of like prosthetic, legs that they use for running with your sort of look like blades like that. Like that's the rhythm that you want to follow. Something along those lines. You can overdo it and then just come and like crop it in afterwards, but really try to feel that swing as much as you can. And that's going to happen here. The feet are sort of like a mission critical thing because they're, there's a lot going on in a small space, and I was gonna say like psychologically they're a little bit more important, definitely more important for some people, but I just mean that like people are aware of like hands and feet and faces more than like that you have them and you have looked at them. If I tell you about your tensor fascia lata, you probably have no idea what the fuck I'm talking about, right? So it's like a part of the body that people are aware of. Again, sometimes too aware, but so you don't, if you make stuff like a little too small there, like people will pick up on it. So here we just want to like make that grow out, give yourself the extra margin to push the stuff out and really let it flow out of, out of this like sort of singular, or this tighter funnel of the leg. Okay. So that's it. Basically keep more of this stuff. Don't feel like you have this kind of like responsibility to, like cut out every little piece of everything and make everything like super like, like over explain things basically. Anyway, so, all right, very good. So that is Mark. And then we're going to go to Seraph. Seraph.
Oh,
cool. Okay. So overall, looking really good. I thought I saw a plumb line in here. Maybe I was hallucinating, but I thought I saw one. I think two things that stand out to me about this drawing. Actually, three. You're doing a really good job with the character. Like, that actually looks like the guy. You're doing a really good job of differentiating out like the kind of boxiness that you see around the torso. Like here, you're not just like rounding them out, right? You're not just making like a generic egg rib cage. You're actually like really looking out for what makes this different. And you can see that in the arm too. Like, you have a really good eye for like the variety that is that's happening there. It's not just like a bunch of sausage forms here, which again is really great to see. You're also bold, you know, coming in like, you know, like super dark in here, and, you know, not being afraid to put down this much charcoal. I think that's phenomenal, right? You have to cultivate that. But basically, everybody has, you know, this kind of spectrum, right, between like, you know, being, you know, a big, careful nerd and just not giving a shit, right? And you need both, right? So, you know, this would be, you know, careful, carefree. You know, I think right now we're a little bit further over on the carefree side. We would benefit from reining it in a little bit. We don't want you over here. We don't want you like, you know, too worried about like, oh, my measurements, you know, whatever. Not to that degree, right? But you probably do need a few measurements in there, because otherwise, you know, you're gonna start making stuff like too wide. Like this is, you know, like significantly wider than what you see here. And so
probably too,
it's mainly just kind of like
one thing is that like everyone exists on that spectrum, and you'll meet. I feel like most people, I think I meet like 70% are a little bit too on the carefree side. I think that's like a little bit more common just with like ADHD ass artists, but a lot of people are on like the way too careful side, and they're both just as bad in different ways. It can actually be a lot harder to break the super careful people out, because they're so scared to try anything that it hurts, you know, the ability to like iterate and improve on this stuff. I think both of us, me and Ramon, probably pretty comfortable in saying that we're on the carefree side a little bit too much. We're more likely to like, you know, goof something up with some proportions, and you know, we have to double check. So yeah.
But it also, like, you yourself as a person are going to be on different parts of this, like even day to day. Like, you know, me when I take my Adderall for my ADHD is different than me when I don't. You know what I mean? And it's like, also like over time, like as I've gotten older, like I have learned to be more patient. I was very impatient, like growing up. And I've had to train myself to be more careful, and then I overdid it for a few years, and now I had to find the balance. And that's, you know, you never just arrive at a, you know, like a perfect spot where you are just in full Zen mode of like caring just enough but not too much. You know, you're always going to be balancing that. But what I don't think you should do, which I think is wild, is to work in a carefree way, but but have the anxiety of someone who's super careful. If you're not willing to measure it out and whatever, then you can't complain about the proportions not being closer. You know, it's like you have to sort of like, if you want it, then you have to, you know, like actually like put in the work for that thing. If you don't want it, that's okay, right? But you have to be aware, like you can't, like, and it's the same works for time, right? It's like you can't, you know, be really hard on yourself and be like, why can't I do a perfect academic drawing like, you know, like these people did? And it's like, did you give yourself enough time?
Yeah.
Well, no, I gave myself 3 hours and they did it in 12. And it's like, okay, well then what the fuck are you talking about then?
Normally it's like trying to copy a master painting without any underdrawing and just throwing paint directly on the canvas. And they spent like 45 minutes on it. And it's like, I'm horrible. I'll never figure this out.
I'm a terrible person. Yeah, exactly. You have to give yourself a fair shot at this. If you do not give yourself a fair shot where you create the conditions for success to happen, then do not complain about it. Because then you're just kind of like being mean to yourself for no reason then, right? If, you know, give yourself the tools that you need to make it happen if it matters that much to you. And if not, then it doesn't matter that much to you, you know, and that's okay. You just have to, you know, admit it to yourself. So anyway, going back to this drawing, you know, you're doing a great job with this and you are in a really, really good spot. Because basically, with a tiny little bit of planning, you are going to just like get this, right on point pretty much every time. Like you'll miss a little bit, everybody will, but it's not going to be like a huge issue. Quick thing I would say is like, okay, I like that you're being really bold and putting this in dark, because most people are too afraid to do that, but we're probably going overboard, right? If you look over here, you squint down, look for the darkest thing you can find on this reference. Darkest point is probably here in between the legs, maybe like back here or something, or maybe that's a little spot on the hands. It is not the background, right? If you squint down, that background is dark, but is it this dark? Probably not, right? And so you just gotta like, hold yourself back just a little bit. Okay, so what you want to do here, we'll do it on the side, is basically you just want to be like a little bit more careful with the setup and also just not, but not obsessive over it, right? So, take your thing, drop the plumb line, obviously, hold up your actual string in front of it and all that, measure out the number of heads, however many heads that ends up being. Your vertical measurements are pretty good. Like, even if we scale it up, like it lines up like reasonably well. But again, width-wise, the stuff is a little too big. So here, whatever, just pretend that we actually went through and did the, did the head measurements, like actually checking them. I'm not gonna, we don't have time to actually like do that like here, like for real, but pretend that these are all the same and that we actually measure them. So what I would do is, okay, find the pit of the neck. That's this right here, okay? That is where everything comes from. The shoulders grow out of that, right? So you can teeter-totter the shoulders out of that. That's gonna come out, like that at that angle. Your angles are good. Someone said, it's interesting how the gesture is perfect considering that the proportions are off. Well, because those are separate things, right? Proportion is just the relative size that something is on the page. Gesture or movement is the tilt, right? So the tilts are fine. The tilts are perfectly fine. And even the proportions overall, like I said, just quick assessment, they're pretty good up and down. It's side to side that they start to, diverge from the model a lot. And so anyway, you go from here, from this little point here, you can, pull out, just the entire head, the entire tilt of it, which again, your tilt's pretty damn good, okay? So here we go, right there, okay? Then get how this comes back to the plumb line, so maybe like something like this. Again, I would pretend that there's like a bag over the head, just like a ski mask or something. So take that, bring it in, something like that. Don't worry about like this part of the traps and all that. Just get the shoulders overall, get that in here. I would say get the center line, get how it comes off of the plumb line and how it comes back in. The crotch is almost right on the plumb line. So this is coming off of it. And then, by the time you get down here, it is starting to basically come in. So I would probably put that in and then connect the dots, right? Then connect this through like that. Okay. Again, if you actually measure, you can go ahead and check, where the hips are. You can just, make a little angle going like that. And then to check how wide the shoulders are, basically you can go from the top of the head here, say like go like right here, and then just, triangulate, like on your reference, like look at what angle that forms to get to the edge of the shoulder. And here you can do the same thing. You don't have to actually draw that. You can literally just like, put your eyes on this point here, and then, put your pencil or your charcoal on this point over here, which corresponds to it. And here, the tilt has to be a little tiltier. And then here, look at what angle that forms. Look at what that is. It's like, it's not vertical, it's not horizontal, it's somewhere in the middle, right? Is it exactly 45 degrees? Who knows? We don't care that much. Now, you could draw that guideline, but you don't have to. You can just trace it above the paper and just be like, okay, like right about there is where the shoulder stops. Then you go to the other side and you do the same thing. Look at the angle here, put your eyes right there, boom, 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 scan, boom. That's probably where it is right there, okay? Now you're gonna have a pretty good estimate of, where, like some pretty good targets for where those shoulders are gonna be. Is it gonna be perfect? No, it's probably gonna be somewhere around here, but it's definitely not gonna be way the hell over here or over here. So now you have something to work with. Then, forget about the arm, don't worry about that. Try to bring it from the shoulders into the hips. Try to see like what that tilt looks like. So if we go from this shoulder down into the hips, what does it look like? Here, it's almost vertical. It's almost just straight, right? And on the other side, it goes in like this, and then there's a break. Okay, fine. That's not bad. We can go ahead and replicate that over here. This is almost straight here. And then this comes in, and right about here, there's a little break. This is your container. From the hips, then you can just bring it into the crotch, pretend that he's wearing underwear. Pretend that, you know, this is an underwear ad or something like that. The crotch is the end of the torso. So go ahead and just bring that in. Doesn't have to be in perfectly straight lines, you know, it can be a little bit curved. So bring it in. Now you have a pretty decent torso to start out from. You know, my instinct right now, you know, is like, oh, maybe there's a little too much room on this side of the center line. Maybe that needs to be like a little narrower. I don't know. It's a feeling that I get just being able to look at it overall. But you know, if we bring it in a little more or a little less, it's, you know, it's not going to make that big of a difference. You know, in an academic drawing, if you miss it by this much, like if it's here when it should be here, that's not the biggest problem that you have. It's not like a huge cause for concern. That's like within the regular margin of error. So anyway, with these things, again, just set it up like this, you know, try to get yourself to, you know, the ground, right? So go through the standing leg, whichever one has the most weight on it. In this case, it's this one, right? Try to funnel all of this stuff, you know, basically from the torso, try to get it into the leg so that you can get down here. So let's say, again, let's pretend that we measured it, pretend that we have the ankle right to the side of the plumb line, like right about here. That's our target. You know, the hips come out somewhere here. And I mean, you could just, you know, you can kind of guesstimate where the hips are going to be here if you want. You know, obviously they're not coming out like this. It's not going to be over here. Or you could just go to right where the ankle is, and from the bottom up, just average out that angle, right? So just look at it and then just, you know, bring it up like that, and then that'll help you to figure out where the hips are, okay? Once you have that, check your measurements. You'll see where the knees are. If you can see where that one knee is, then you can figure out where the other knee is going to be. So you can just go, oh, boom, right there, other knee, okay? Bring it out from the hips here, you know, that comes through, oh, comes through here, right there. And then just, you know, check the angle to the knee, pop, and then see how it comes in, pop, okay? Keep that nice and clean. Do not complicate this. If you want the arm, again, you know, triangulate to find that new point. You know, you can check to see like, oh, it's like, you know, the elbows are about the height of like the, you know, the pecs. It's like a little bit below. Okay, fine. You know, you can check that. You can also check like roughly what angle is formed from like, you know, the top of the head to, you know, the elbow or something, right? Like you can, you know, sort of go ahead and check that if you want. You know, let's say it's like around here somewhere. You can check this angle against other stuff. Like, you know, what angle does it form against like this shoulder? Like, you know, maybe from the shoulder it's like this. So maybe right here is where you find it. Anyway, once you have, you know, like a little setup like that, then do what you did here. You know, the work that you did is good. It just has to fit into this framework. So if you can take this and squeeze it on in here, you'll be golden. Okay?
Yeah. There's a lot of value too in just like knowing where this is where the line starts and then this is where the line ends, you know? Like if you know where both of those are before you start making the line, it's really, really helpful. And you can, you know, find that simplicity and even like kind of practice it through a couple times, at least in your mind, if not, you know, in the air a little bit before you make the mark. It's super helpful. And then, yeah, it can help you like find that big angle that sweeps through everything without getting, you know, stuck on the, you know, in, out, in, out, in, out over every bump. Definitely.
Yeah, and it's like, and again, this is not a new skill for you. You already do this, you know, and I'll tell you why. When you leave the house, do you just start walking without knowing where you're going? Maybe sometimes you do that a little bit, right? But it's like if you're taking a trip from where you live to, you know, across town and you have to get somewhere, you have an appointment, you know, at like some building or whatever, are you just going to start walking? Just like without any plan? Probably not, right? You're going to know where your start location is. You're going to know where you need to end up. And then you have some margin to move around in terms of how you get there. But again, this kind of planning is literally the kind of planning that allows you to live your life already. Like you're already doing this, right? And in terms of like when you introduce like a lay-in like this or measuring to people, they think, "Oh, I have to measure everything all the time." No, you don't. You already don't do that in your regular life. For example, a calendar. Calendars are good for keeping track of a few events that are really spaced out, right? Some people will put more things in their calendar so that they don't forget. Some people will need to put in fewer. Okay. Nobody, now, putting in a few events in a calendar so you can keep track of them is very helpful for most people. Putting in every move that you make and every word that you're going to say in a day and planning it out ahead of time and putting it in your calendar would be more difficult than not doing that. You know what I mean? If you overuse the calendar becomes a problem instead of being a solution to something. It becomes more trouble than it's worth. The same is true of measuring. Measure a little bit. Oh, I have to be here at this point of the drawing. Oh, I have to be here at this point of the drawing. Oh, I have an appointment here and an appointment here and an appointment here. But don't drive yourself crazy trying to like map out all this tiny stuff, you know? You'll figure it out. It's not a big deal. You know, what you don't want to miss on too much is the big stuff. You can miss on the small stuff. It does not matter. So,
yeah, definitely.
Go ahead and save it.
I think we got to start like moving pretty quick. I think I can hop in here. I got like 4 pulled up.
Sure.
I think let's start knocking out like a few at a time on the stream or on one screen now that we've kind of covered some of those like basic approach stuff. We can kind of
basics of it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I grabbed the rest, the next few Germanicus, and you can grab the next few of the lady if you want. Let me grab here.
Okay, sure.
We'll layer up. So let's see. All right, I'll start with this one here. So we got about 90 or so minutes left, and it gives us about time for 30 seconds per critique. It's
great.
At the rate that we're going, factoring a little bit of overage. All right. Let me get in here. So yeah, you're probably on the end of the spectrum that is, a little bit more towards the careful side. I think this is done in pencil. Maybe not. And it's pretty nice. Like this is a nice nice drawing. It's got a nice level of accuracy, I'd say. I think it's just going to be a factor of thinking about, what is the character of the figure here, right? So, like, what is the action of this guy? You have, the accuracy here is pretty decent, especially vertically. The head heights look really good. It's a very believable, realistic figure. I like some of the movement we have in the arm here. I think what's going to help take this type of stuff to the next level for you is thinking about, what is this figure doing? And without being, this sounds like an insult, but I swear it's not, what does the figure look like? Not just as like a bunch of angles, but like, what do they just look like? Right. So for example, this guy, he's kind of sassy, twirling his hair. He's got his chest back. He's got his hips swayed pretty hard from side to side. We have kind of these elements that are stacking on top of each other. If you want a full anatomy course, the reason why we draw these Greek sculptures is because they just do this anatomy stuff so much better than really, honestly, most like any class is going to give you. It's nice to go through some, basic stuff so what the muscles kind of are, where they're coming from if you're on the more advanced side. But these Greek sculptures give you pretty much everything you need to know, and they're so good. They're so simple. What we want to feel is kind of these elements stacking over each other, right? So we have the pit of the neck, we have the crotch. The plumb line here it's actually pretty correct, but really, what we want to find is this chest pulling outwards, right? Kind of at a harder angle. Maybe it cuts back in here a little bit. But in general, this line keeps flowing outwards like this. It's projecting forward. And then it hits that break at the end of the rib cage, right? And it starts to kick back in a lot more. And then we have the pubic triangle in here. And we're pulling out and across for here. And then again, we're kind of sweeping backwards here for the hips. Pulling out to the side of these obliques here, which pull out and then in. And then again, this feels like it's pulling backwards towards the neck because it's leaning outwards and it's projecting forwards. And then this feels like it's cutting in super hard because we're transitioning down into this abdomen, into these abs, which pull down and into here. And we have that on the other side. It's just a little bit lighter, right? In the same way that we have this oblique that's stacking here and then pulling down around and across. With this guy's face, I think you have the angles right. You have the accuracy right. It feels a little bit timid. And if we knock out a little bit more, it's interesting. I think this looks really good. So all this stuff is pretty spot on. You're as accurate as you're ever, pretty close as accurate as you're ever going to need to be. Here's the center line down the face. Give myself a little bit of width here. And let's look for some of these big simplifications. I'm going to turn the taper off of this brush. Not get caught up into tilting this head too much. Make sure this nose really projects out and it projects down and past that, the line where the third is because it's hanging down and lower. Got the color of the paper there. Fill that in. Maybe a little bit too much on there. And don't be afraid to knock these into a deeper value. I think this is part of, it's a big reason why me and Ramon like, charcoal so much is you got to get down to whatever this value is out of 10, probably 4 out of 10 or so. If 0 is black, you got to get down there eventually if you want this drawing to be finished, right? So there's no real reason too much. Like it's sometimes helpful to creep up on stuff. It's not really a whole lot of reason to creep up on your shadow value because it's not like super difficult to see. Like pretty much anyone can get this value right with a basic comparison. Find the darkest point. Is it black? It's a little bit lighter than black, right? Pretty much anyone can get that value nailed. There's not a whole lot of benefit into laying it in too lightly, and that's part of the reason why I don't think we like graphite quite as much for this type of stuff is because it really rewards you on creeping up to stuff and laying in this light shadow and then layering over it and then using a different grade of pencil when you don't really, it doesn't really bring you pretty much any benefit at all if you're just trying to lay in a shadow. So look for what's characteristic about the face. This brow line is pulling out and around. The width of this, how much negative space do we have to the side of the hair? What shapes do we have in here? The brow comes out a little bit, out over, and cuts off pretty hard there at the side. A little bit more characteristic. Likewise in here, it's you can really blast in these darkest shadows. There's nothing to lose because even if you have to erase it and lighten it up, you don't need to go all the way back to light, the white of the paper, I mean. So there's not really a whole lot to lose. So don't worry, With drawing, I'll steal a Ramon analogy here. With drawing is the lowest stake thing ever. There's pretty much no risk to this stuff at all. Maybe if you're doing like a sport or something, if you mess up, you could get like a concussion or something like that. There's no risk to what we do here at all. And we take much more. This is the Ramon part. We take much more risk in our everyday life. If every time you cross the street, every time you get in a car and drive somewhere into an Uber, you guys know Uber drivers. Those guys are like on the edge of death, of life and death, every trip that they make. So there's no, you take much greater risks every day in your life. There's no reason to not knock stuff in as broadly as possible. That way you can simplify out these ideas in the broadest way, and it's going to make you more accurate. It's going to give you more to compare to. It's going to allow you to iterate a little bit faster, and your mind's just going to be a little bit less free, a little bit more free, so that you can focus on, less things. Again, that's our bimboification.
But that really is like true. Like I honestly try to apply that like in every aspect of my life, because it's almost like a survival mechanism. Like your job, your responsibility to yourself is to make your life easier, because the difficulty of life asserts itself without your help. Life does not need your help to be more chaotic or to be more difficult. It does that automatically. You need to like simplify things for yourself, make things more digestible, make things a little easier, be nicer to yourself, organize things. That's the shit that doesn't happen on its own, right? Things being difficult will happen on its own.
Good point.
And you do have a choice. You can choose to. You can make anything complicated if you want to. You can look for all kinds of little like, oh well, actually this thing is going to be like this and this is going to be like that, and I don't know if, what if I fail? What if you fucking don't? What if you don't? What if you succeed? But you have to be willing to take that chance for that to happen.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. It's a lot of what if I fails, but not a lot of what if I succeed. It's something that you don't hear all that often. Yeah,
actually. And the other thing, especially when you're a beginner, it's like, you have, because people will sort of be like very confident that they'll fail, and it's like, actually, you have no fucking idea. And especially when you're starting out in drawing, you don't know if you're going to you don't know if you're going to fail, and you also don't know if you're going to succeed or not. And so you surrender yourself to the process, because at that point, what do you know? But honestly, even if after you've been doing this stuff for a while, it's like, what do any of us know, really? Like every time I started drawing, like I don't fucking know how it's going to turn out. I just know that there are strategies that have worked for other people, that a lot of people developed over time, and it works pretty well. So, I'm not going to burden myself with reinventing the wheel as far as that goes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's definitely true. Just to wrap this one up here, so we can keep kind of rapid firing down the list. So look for those big actions of what is going on, and think about that stuff as you're drawing it. You can lean off of the angle matching and that type of stuff, because I think you're just about as good as you can get. Instead, look for kind of the character of what's happening. This leg is swinging out. It's creating this negative space in here. It's starting here. It's swinging out. Same over here. We can check the angle from the find where the bottom of the knee is. Likewise over here, swinging out over here, cutting ourselves down. I think if you're less worried about getting this right, and you're more worried about getting this right, you're going to end up getting, both right a lot easier. Because this is great. I think this is a really good drawing. And then on the value stuff, just push in those values. A little bit more. And, don't be afraid to just knock stuff out, and keep your lights nice and simple, and not, knock stuff out really towards the edge of the shadows or in the darkest spots. And I think you're going to see, you can really make tremendous leaps in not that much time. One final thing too is like while you're working your way around kind of casually too, after you maybe block in your plumb line or count your head heights and stuff, get that initial wave of accuracy like Ramon showed, as you're working your way around going from piece to piece too, you can kind of verify the size of different stuff too. So right here what I'm seeing is it's just a little bit small. This is an area where you have to go, okay, my measurement told me that it should be this size, but maybe my measurement's wrong. And right now my eyes are telling me that it's wrong. And that's something I can listen to sometimes. Like sometimes your eyes are going to lie to you, but if you already have that initial wave of accuracy in, you can trust yourself. And, clearly I think this should be a little bit bigger on here. And that's totally okay to do. And you can verify that too with a plumb line, right? Like, the edge of this shoulder is a little bit outside of this guy's head. The edge of the shoulder is a little bit too far inside, I think. So, it's not going to be a big difference. You're going to get 90% of the way there with your measurements. And then you're going to be able to just go, okay, I just need to pull stuff out a little bit more. And that's going to make everything a little bit better. Cool. I'm going to move on to the next one over here. We got Toko over here. Toko, another, 19th century academic drawing, grinder in the Discord. This is looking great, Toko. This is really, really one of your best, full cast drawings yet. I think it's looking great. Really feeling nice and characteristic and formy. These things feel strong. I think this arm is spectacular, and the head is there too. And one thing I do want to compliment you on too is I think this is such a good lay-in, dude. I wish I could do lay-ins like this a lot of the time. There's a really nice characteristic feeling to this. Like just the way that this torso, this rib cage comes down and in, and you can feel this kind of slot in, and this is our rib cage in here, and then this is our obliques, our midsection in here, and then here's where our pelvis is. This, and I really like kind of how these arms swing out and how you can feel this stuff wrap in and around this type of stuff. It looks really, really strong. And to the point where I hate to tell you to tighten up because I know that you're coming off of we go through waves with this stuff. Like Ramon said earlier, there's going to be times where you feel like, okay, I got to learn to be more patient. And I think you went through a long phase of that, and now you're trying to loosen back up. It's always going to be a back and forth battle with that, and you're going to go through phases of either one, and you just got to trust that you're going to keep, improving those skills over time. That you will, take a little bit from this side and take a little bit from that side and find your way over time. So there is some stuff that I do want to tighten up with this. Let me pull it over a little bit more. That looks kind of interesting. It's not the same scale though. Let me pull this up to the top. There we go. Oh my god, I dragged the wrong layer. I'm boomer posting. I'm trying to drag layers around on a 12-inch tablet with the layers made as small as possible, so this big. Okay, here we go. Did a great job on the drapery too. It's nice to not neglect that stuff because it's just as important as anything else. I'm not doing my typical one layer mouse only here. I think that type of stuff feels really formy over here. It is losing, I think, a little bit of what makes this guy, in the same vein that I just talked to the last critique in. It is making, losing a little bit of that gesture, a little bit of that character, right? So we should have this chest kind of projecting forward a little bit more, and then tucking back in, and we get a really strong, look at your tilt across your. God, I'm trying not to think of the actual word. Your front of your hips, the aces points, the anterior superior iliac crest. If you look at that tilt, you see how far above this side is over here, versus you're kind of a little bit too flat. So just double checking that stuff. as you're laying in, and remembering that like those are the most important ideas to think about, going from side to side like this. So if we can just clean that up just a little bit in here and push that out, because I think the way you're moving the charcoal is like, it's great. I don't have any the values are pretty good all around. I don't have too much critique there. A little bit dark in here. So if we push that in, and then we really just want to make this chest feel like it's pulling out a little bit more. And one thing too with this lay-in is me and Ramon went to Lime Academy to look at their 19th century drawing collection, and we also own, Ramon just gave me a 19th century drawing that I showed off last stream. And one thing that really surprised me about those academic drawings that I had is the outlines were very thin. It is give or take with these. Some people were thicker, but I haven't seen one that's quite so thick here. One thing that surprised me was they do have that charcoal sharpened out to a finer point, and they might miss the contour a few times. I think it's much more typical. You'll see kind of like this around the edge of something, where they're like missing 3 or 4 times or kind of bringing it in a little bit more each time. That's pretty common. What you don't see quite as much though is like really thick, like heavy pressure. I know with the willow charcoal, it can be a little bit soft. It's really nice for laying in the backgrounds. I am trying out just a soft grade of vine charcoal right now, and it's been really nice for making those initial lines. So just something to think about in the future. A slightly harder charcoal can be helpful for laying in like your initial line work, just so it doesn't get so thick, and pressed in and dark. Let me pull some of this stuff out a little bit more. I know I got to keep moving here. I think I'm over. I'm probably
you get
like
that silvery one, Jake?
What was that?
Did you get the one with like the little silver covering thing? The
No.
charcoal?
Oh yeah, I did. Yeah. Oh yeah. Ramon told me about these. This is the fanciest shit ever. Oh, I took the silver off.
It's not that expensive either.
Yeah, it's like the same price as normal vine charcoal. So these are like, let me go to my full screen here. These are like individually wrapped in, they have these like little foil, foil backings. So like you're back here like drawing with your sharpened out foiled piece, and then you can kind of like peel back the foil as it goes back. It's so extra. The charcoal doesn't get on your hands, just from rubbing. It does like you can see it a little bit. There's no reason for it. It's so fancy though. Let me grab it's this. But it's working great too. It's a soft Soho vine charcoal. I don't know. It's just funny. Ramon told me about that. I bought some.
Yeah, one of my students, and every time I teach a workshop in person, like everybody will get slightly different materials. And one of my students in the latest workshop I did out in New Salem had that, and I tried it. I was like, "What is this? This is awesome! This is great." That's like a it's a no signal. That's about as good as like the French charcoal that we used to get. That has been really hard to find. So, and you can get it like local, which is pretty great. Yeah, it's nice. Yeah, so I definitely think that a lot of the 19th century stuff was using. I don't know, who knows? At least for a lot of the drawing was slightly harder charcoal, and it lets them get some nicer lines. Here, let me kind of keep pushing forward with this stuff. There's also just areas too where like I think we're a little bit murky with like where our planes are. Like look at how there is some softness in here, right? Like this is not like a perfectly hard transition, but the action of it is the oblique coming in, hitting the rib cage, and it's changing to, now it's the rib cage. It is a pretty hard change right there. We have, something wedging into another thing. So we don't want to, have any sort of murkiness in our drawing. Again, like if you see it, then call it like it is, right? Like if you see a plane, don't be afraid to put in a plane,
try to get the value right so you're not overstating it. We'll say that. So it'll probably be a little bit too dark here, but just for the sake of demonstration, put it in, call it like it is, and then that gives you the room to have subtlety in other areas where like you're in your lights, and you can do your mushier edges and your subtlety in those areas where I think it'll be more impactful. So, for this stuff, call it like it is. Probably don't need that light. Yeah, that's good. Here's the front. Here's the side. Here's the front of this rib cage. We have like a spot, a bar of light that goes over the top of the rib cage. Sides of the rib cage are a little bit darker. Something like this. Got this light here. Same with the underside of the chest too, right? We're just knocking out these areas here. I'm definitely a little bit dark in this area. Something needs to move over here a little bit, I think. And if you call those angles like they are, you're going to get a much stronger, more structured effect. I'm knocking it out a little bit more like a caveman right now, but even from a distance, like this feels a lot stronger, right? It feels like, he's got a suit of armor on him or like a chest plate on him versus, here we're kind of a little bit more murky. So just something to think about, in regards to both accuracy and with your values. And then again, save your lights. You can keep your lights nice and light, and where you see those harder plane transitions, don't be afraid to call it. Otherwise, great job. I really like this. There's a couple other areas too that I want to, I got to move on. Couple other areas too that like probably just a little bit too thin here. It doesn't feel like we're getting again that super hard plane change where there's areas where you can have stuff stand out a little bit more and feel like it's really slotting in. And this is small enough like adjustments too that this is just kind of the like eyeballing. You guys if you watch our course, we have a whole lesson on the Illuminati pyramid, which is Ramon's patented measuring ideas. The triangle is triangulation, and then there's the lattice, like the gridding that goes across the inside of the pyramid, and that's the like comparative measurements. And then the eyeball in the center of the pyramid is eyeballing things. So like you do your big triangulations, your big envelopes, you do your comparative measurements, your plumb line, you get those kind of rigid measurements in, and then the rest is like it's 90% of the way there. I got to bump it over a little bit or a little bit less. And that is what really, that's what kind of gets you that last bit of accuracy. A lot of people try to search super hard with their measurements for that tiny 10% accuracy, and it's just measuring's not precise enough. You're never going to be precise enough doing this to get, the width of an eyebrow 100% correct. Cool. Yeah. Do you want to? You want to grab one, Ramon? I have Christy Ann's here, I think, but I'd like to hand it off to you.
Okay, I've got a bunch of the ones of this particular sculpture, the Thorvaldsen, lined up.
Yeah,
so I can just run through these. All right, and again, really great work, everybody. Okay, so we'll just speed run through these. Okay, so in looking at this one here, there's a lot of really beautiful, sensitive work that you did here. The
Oh, I'm
actual
sorry.
like figuring out of the tilt of the tilt of the head, I think is really well done. There's some work in the hands here that I think is again like really sensitive and really beautiful. One thing I would say is, I do think that if you want to, again, really make this like a study that you're gonna like really profit from, that you're really gonna like get something out of, is you gotta set up the thing a little bit more. You gotta plan it a little bit more, right? Because the way that you're drawing the individual parts is really nice and really sensitive. But the size between them, there's a lot of disparities, right? So like the head's pretty big, hands are pretty big, torso gets really small, legs get really small, right? And so you need to do a lot, like a bit more of like the kind of overall planning, like we talked about before. And then once you have kind of like a space for that stuff, like how many heads tall, what the plumb line is, a couple of angles, then you can fit in this really sensitive work and it'll be, I think significantly more rewarding because you're not going to be fighting like, this is too big, this is too small. You'll have to make adjustments, but it'll be within a much smaller margin. Anyway, so here, as far as the actual like modeling with value, like the actual shading goes, you want to be quite a bit bolder, right? So okay, set this up, sure, but if you squint down, her head is basically just basically split in two. You get this. And then you get, okay, squint down, you get this as well. And you get this. And then, the little wiggles side to side of the mouth, we're not gonna worry about. Like, get this big line up first, right? Yeah, it's a little too dark. But get this big line up over here first. And again, don't be afraid to do this. Don't be afraid to just cut through this entire thing. Again, you can always come back and erase. It looks like you're using charcoal. That should make it, relatively easy to, come back and, if you group together a lot of this hair, with the eraser, you can always come and like, cut into it or, take some part out. But basically, again, group this together, squint to get this over here too, group this together as well. These shadows start out with clearer borders. Really get how like the shadow goes over here and then it comes down like this. Basically it hits this plane and then it goes boom down. Okay, so keep it sharper at first, and then you can start to sort of work it with the stump so that it's not quite so graphic and sharp here. So part of what we want out of this cast shadow is, and why the edge of it is important, is it shows us how it's traveling over the curvature of the abs, or of the rib cage in this case. So it's traveling over. Here it drops on the breast like that. It goes down, then it goes over, then it goes down, right? It's like a set of stairs. It's like boom, 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 boom. Okay, so that's something that we want to get over here. So, travel down, then over, then down again. Okay, and then you go ahead and you fill it in. Fill it in with parallel lines if you can, something like that, just to make sure that they're nice and even. That's going to make your stumping a lot easier to do. And I think you could afford to put in a bit more material, like a bit more like actual charcoal in there. I think that would be helpful. As you come down with this, boom, down and then over like that. Okay, boom, boom. And same thing here. Just, really, actually fill this in, get like a nice, really bite into it. Get like a nice little chunk of this here. Again, squint down, get how it comes in here. And you want to commit to this stuff a little bit more. And then go ahead and fill it in. Once you've filled it in, then you can, take your stump and drag out the halftones from there. And again, you squint down to see how wide that needs to be. Maybe like this wide is enough here. And then you can take your clean stump and then you can, pull that out from there. And if you need to go back over this, you can go back over this a little bit. And then, later, if you lose a little bit of like, some areas of the shadow that need to be a little bit, more insistent, that need to stand out a little bit more, then you can go back and reinforce little bits, and that's where you can get like some of these little deviations and details and, little ripples along the way. Okay. But that's what I would focus on. I think the main thing is going to be for you to be invest a little bit more in the planning and at the beginning, and then be, pretty bold and decisive when you put in those shadows. Okay, so over here, okay, good. You know, really nice, like sensitive work in here. The flow of the figure, I think, is really nice. The foreshortening is handled well here. What I would say is kind of the same thing, actually. Like you want to plan it out a little bit more because your figure, the torso, and actually even from the legs, it's all tilting off this way, right? It feels like she's like falling over to the side. Whereas here, yes, there is this angle going this way, but the torso and the head counterbalance it going that way, right? And so, you want to not focus so much on all of these like little small parts here, but you want to get, the aspect of just the movement of the overall, figure here. And so, don't worry about the arms and all that stuff at first. Worry more about getting the overall direction of all of this corresponding to what you see over there. So this should be probably closer to this, something like that. Again, really nice, like sensitive work being done in here. What I would say is you could afford to be a little bit bolder in some areas. So kind of like what we said here, you can come in and this is, good job on this. If when you start stumping, you did a good job of really pulling this out and actually getting this to feel like it's really turning, like there's a big plane there. You can come back and restate some of these areas if you want. If the shadow, when you pulled out the halftones, if it ate too much into the shadow, you can go and restate the shadow. If you need to come back over it with like a Conte crayon and just give it, again, a couple little, little love taps here to, move things around or to, change the direction of things slightly, then, that's fine. Here you can come in and sharpen up this cast shadow. The edges of it are relatively sharp. And that creates a distinction between it and this form shadow up here. So you can do that. Again, similar to what I told Marek, really try to feel how the foot actually like flows out. So tie this all together. This comes in, this flows out like this. Really try to get how this flows out like that. Think of the 2 feet as one thing if you can. Think of her like as a mermaid. Imagine that it's like one big leg and the feet are the fins, right? Again, the more you can group this stuff together, the better off you'll be. Similarly here, again, squint down. That reflected light is there, but it's not that strong. So you're not going to get like, you get some contrast, but not to the degree that we have currently. So you knock that back a little bit. And even if you took that out completely, it's not going to make a huge difference. So, err on the side of keeping these things a little simpler. And I mentioned this to somebody before too. Here, just careful that this doesn't just appear as like just like a little stripe. You might have to integrate this a little bit more, or maybe that area went like a little too dark, right? But you can group this together a little bit more. Group this together a little bit more, and then take this and transition it into what's up here. The big thing that you have to get here is how this is coming down and then boom, this fits into it. This is coming down and then boom, the leg stands out from that. So the fitting in of the parts, that's super important. Like these tones help you to show the orientation in space of these forms and how they fit into each other. So it's not just about like values for the sake of having values. It's values as they show you the form, as they reveal the form to you. So anyway, you can put in, the little like double tap like this if you want. And then, if it's too sharp, then you just go over it with the stump and reintegrate it back in. But, you want it to not stand out too much. It still has to feel like it's part of this whole, broader area. Okay? All right, very good. And here we have our boy Jacob.
Mm-hmm. Great job on this
Let's
one.
go ahead. Yeah, this is really nicely done, like really beautiful drawing. And you're getting all of the benefits of doing like a legitimate like academic drawing. Like the paper is helping you to like diffuse like the overall like marks and stuff so that it's not like super sharp. You're getting some really great control in here. You're being bold in putting in the shadows. Some of these halftones are really delicate here. That's really effective, really cool to see. Watch the wobble on this. Here, yes, you can, kind of wiggle these things around, but the big gist of it will always be dominant. And so when you look at the outside of this, it's starting to get like blop, 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 like that. And, it's like there's a little too much in and out here, whereas over here, the outside is boom, boom, right? And so
It's the value contrast on the inside of that elbow bump that makes it really look like there's some wobble, but it's not actually really there.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the old Jerome, this is like Jerome and his motivational speaker, Tony Robbins era. The change happens on the inside, not on the outside. So it's like, yeah, the outline's going to be usually pretty simple. And then inside of it, in here is where you'll have the actual like overlaps that create the impression of those bumps, right? But the outline itself, the container for it, is not where that's usually happening, not to a very large degree. Now, you're going to have that, and then sure, you can come and you can pop this out a little bit more, but I do mean a little bit more. It's not going to be a whole lot. And so, you come, because the thing is, like, the more you get into the weeds of these drawings, like, you're going to, you will have the impulse, the longing to noodle, and to make it like overly fancy or whatever. And there has to be a part of you that is like, no, like we want like just like clear, direct, boom, boom, right? So that's actually one of like the coolest things about this kind of drawing is that it demands everything from you, like every part of you, the most careful part of you, the most careless part of you, right? The part of you that is, interested in like the vagaries of like little like, poetic little moments, and the part of you that's like, let's get her done. Like it is all of it. You get to use all of yourself to do this, right? And so, I think that you're at a really good point here, and the progress will come from you sort of accessing like more parts of yourself, as sort of woo-woo as that sounds. Here, squint down. There's not as much contrast in these fingers. This is going really light, and it's probably not. If you compare that to the actual lightest light, which is probably this little bit of the elbow, it's not quite the same. So we can knock that back a little bit. Group it together with this. This hand, as it turns, it will get darker overall. Don't get too distracted by like the knuckles and all that stuff. The overall reality of this is, boom, this goes away from the light, that gets darker. Boom, this goes away from the light, this gets darker, and it never gets quite as light as what you have here. That little bump does get lighter, but not that much. What you need to do is make the stuff around it darker. That's the thing that's actually happening. So, okay, so you can do that. Then zoom out. Really beautiful in terms of like fitting this in. Really good job there. You can probably afford to push this the tiniest bit more. Like, and I'm talking like, yeah, like less than actually what I did. That's too much. But just a little tiny bit. And then you can probably erase a little bit of this here just to get like this to fit into, this other area. Watch it here with the wobble on the hip. That's pushing out a little too much. So, we gotta go ahead and trim that in. It's probably a little bit more like that. So here again, you can come in with the Conte crayon and just be really decisive about some of these things. Like this is literally just like boom, boom, right? So let's get that, let's reclaim that because you mostly have that, but it's getting a little bit lost. So here, double tap, then we go across on the patella like this, and then we just drop it down, and then this is a cast shadow. Okay, all good. It'll look kind of crude here, but when you zoom out, it'll look fine, and it'll add the structure that you need there. This is really nice, really subtle. We can push a little bit more, just get these bad boys in there a bit more, and then these knees are getting too light, and so is this bump here. So what needs to happen is this needs to get darker. This needs to get darker as we come down here, like this. Whoops, not like that though, it's too much. You're in a permanent state of Goldilocks-ing when you're doing this, where you're like, oh, too hot, oh, too cold.
Mm-hmm.
You know, here, you bring that in, and then, you know, you can stump around these parts so that it's, you know, so that these little double taps are not so evident. Then if you need to, you drop this whole thing down. If you need the stuff to stand out, you know, you probably can, you have some room to go darker on these things rather than lighter on these. Here, you know, just the whole thing is pretty dark. If you squint down, it's pretty similar. Just, you know, just give us the, you know, just give us like the whole thing. Just boom, you know, just like that.
I think that's kind of the biggest advice with this one is like the drawings. The drawings mostly there. It's a good drawing. Yeah. The fitting into the forms is there. It's good. Mm-hmm. It's just probably like the big general read, like step back and it's like, well, the feet are darker than the hands, right? And the thighs are darker than the chest, right? So there's just like a general level of like a gradient that needs to go up on it before you start working into, you know, and not that you have to, you know, do the whole gradient first on the whole figure, but it's just something to keep in mind as you go from piece to piece, right? Like the whole lower stomach probably too could just get knocked down a peg.
Yeah, you got to make like those like executive decisions, like the global decisions. Like you started out like thinking about that stuff, and then this happens to everybody. Like you start out thinking about it, then you get caught in the weeds a little bit, and that's fine. That's like part of the process. Then you have to reclaim those big choices and make sure that like it actually like that you actually got what you wanted, you know, and that you didn't get like lost in the sauce like halfway through. So yeah, that's why it's like it's a good idea to like look at this stuff from further away. Just like Jake said. So, okay, these. We can go to this one here. Really great handling of the material here. The method of work is really, really clear. And, you know, I think you're on a really good track here because, again, approaching it this way, it's going to make your life so much easier. Like, you know, so, you know, keeping it this simple, I think, again, you know, really, really good job on that. What I would say is, you know, with the stump, you don't need to have like, you know, like you don't need to keep it this graphic, right? Like it doesn't need to be like one shape, two shapes, right? Like we're not thinking about this as shapes. When you establish these big planes, these big sides of the form, then, you know, just like Jake said, you set up the big groups and then you can noodle around a little bit, you know, like in between, you know, yeah, there's going to be like an extra value there, but it's not like a big enough value group that we sort of think of it that consciously. But here we're going to like, you know, have a little fun, you know, have a little fun around the margins, like, you know, push this stuff out. You know, use your clean stump to then take this and integrate it into, you know, the lights, right? Don't think of these things as like little, you know, like little like dark shoelaces or little dark strings that you're adding on here, right? Again, squint down and look at the overall form here. Like this whole thing is getting darker. This whole thing is getting darker. You know, this whole form is turning here. You know, this is, you know, turning into it as well. You know, this has got a little wobble. And then again, don't think of this as things that you have to kind of like loop, loop, loop like that. Think of it a little bit more in a little bit more of an angular way. Like this has a plane here on the side. Yeah, that's too much. Plane here on the side. This has a plane here on the side. This part is going vertical. This part is going vertical, right? And then you can hit the little pocket. Just tap, 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 tap. Okay. You can keep it a little bit more angular. I think that'll, you know, that'll preserve the structure and not flatten things out. Same thing here. You know, again, don't worry about making these like, you know, these thin little stripes. That's not actually what it looks like. Again, squint down. You'll see that you are rarely going to have, if you have a mark or something like this, right? Like this right here. It's not going to be sharp on both sides. That's almost like never going to happen. So, you know, you might have something that is sharp on one end, like here, but it'll be integrated on the other side, just like a cylinder would be. So here, again, just group the stuff together, bring it around. You know, take a clean stump, make it, you know, work into, you know, the rest of this. Here, again, don't pet this around sort of like this, but okay, squint down, and if you see that this is, this whole area is diving in, just go for it. Just go entirely across. You can always erase it if it doesn't work, but be bold enough to to do that. And here you don't need an outline around that. It's mainly just this coming through, just this fitting into it. So anyway, I think that would be good. Again, don't be afraid to like really, actually go for the gold with these halftones, like really pull this out, right? Especially around here, right? Here, maybe it is fairly narrow, but still, you get at least, try to go as wide as you can, within reason. This is coming through here. This is, pulling out right here, pull out this entire halftone. Again, squint down, look at this area against this area over here, right? So you need to get this halftone darker here. We need to go and push this a little further for this part of the arm to be able to stand out. Again, it's all comparisons. That's our bread and butter here, right? Comparisons, comparisons, comparisons.
And you can do so much too, just from like you have those big blocky shadows laid in, which is great. Like that's the first step. And then now like all you need to do really is just take your stump in that shadow and just pull outwards, and then use that, to set the general tone across the lower legs, across the thigh. You're like, you're at that kind of like 70-80% of the way there, and you actually have a lot of the material down. Like the shadows are laid in dark enough. Just the next step is just dragging it out.
Yeah, you got it. Like you're right at the edge. You're doing just fine. You got to trust yourself. Keep going.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So you want me to just like just finish these out real quick?
Yeah. Keep going.
Okay. So this is looking good. There's a lot of, again, like really sensitive, really beautiful areas here. The movement has worked out pretty well up here, but again, it depends on what you want, right? If you want a naturalistic interpretation of this sculpture, and you want it to be full value, and you want to not tear your hair out, then graphite is not the tool for that. You know what I mean? It's, again, if you want it just purely for fun or artistic expression, then go for it, right? But in terms of the tools that are going to allow you to, like if you're aiming for something like an academic drawing, like if you're trying to go for, one of these things like here, like the academic drawings that we have for reference here, let's say like, one of these, right? Or something like, like this. If you're aiming for that kind of like academic study, then graphite is not going to get you there. And even if it did, it would get you there in like the most painful way possible. So, here, in order to get the modeling, you're having to do a lot of work that, just having, because you're working with such a small, sort of tool, that what happens is, you get an idea of like, oh, this form is going this way, this form is going in, this form is going like this form is going like across this way. By the time that you fill it in with that tiny little pencil point, the idea is gone. You know what I mean? It's like trying to clean a tile floor with a toothbrush. Like you can do it, but it's not the fastest or the easiest way, And so I think, for like, again, the mental work that you're doing, the actual like observation that you're doing, that's all great. I would just say like, make your life easier, choose a medium that loves you back, so at least for this particular, for this particular kind of exercise. Because also you were really bold in going ahead and like covering the half of the face in the shadow, just like it is here. Like you're making the moves that you should make, but the graphite is holding you back because it doesn't have enough contrast. It doesn't allow you to like, really differentiate this, and so that's, a factor that's affecting the drawing. You need something ideally that allows you to like, have very little time between thinking something and doing something, right? As it comes out of your brain, ideally, there shouldn't be that much time between then and the time that it makes it onto the paper, right? And so, in any case, that's something that I would consider. Here, like, again, really think about how these forms fit into each other. Because again, graphite asserts itself too much. It's going to make you think about graphite because it is so cumbersome to fill things in with it, right? Whereas the charcoal, after you get used to the initial, sort of difficulties, it becomes kind of invisible. You're just like, you're working with your stump and all that. Like, you forget that they're there because this is the task that they're meant for. Now, if you were doing a really small little drawing and you don't need it to be full value, if you're doing like a little sketch, then graphite is a very appropriate tool for that, right? So it just kind of depends, It's like, do you want a hammer or do you want do you want a sledgehammer, right? Like, what is the task that you're actually doing? So,
what do you say to the graphite hater allegations, Ramon?
Oh, the graphite hater allegations? Well, here's the thing, it's not that I have a particular vendetta against graphite. It's just that if I saw someone, trying to dig a hole with a spoon, I would be like, "What are you doing? Like, are you okay?" if I saw you trying to eat a plate of food through a fucking straw, I would have some things to say. I'd be like, "Are you all right?" Like, that's not an optimal way to do that. If I saw you trying to eat food with a shovel, that would also be it. You know what I mean? It's not capricious. It's not like use this tool because people use this tool in the past or because I use this tool. It's more like, this is the tool that you would use that would make the most sense for what you're trying to do. Why would you try to like, again, clean a tile floor with a toothbrush or with, I don't know, some kind of like insanely huge, like you're not going to use like one of those like industrial cleaner like trucks to clean your bathroom. You know what I mean? It's like the task dictates the tools.
Have you ever heard of someone? Kat just said graphite putty. Have you ever heard of this stuff? I was introduced.
Oh, what is that?
It's literally this is the craziest thing. Here, we're gonna get into graphite hater hour. We're gonna get into graphite hater hour here.
Okay, all
People
right.
do anything, but just use charcoal. It's so funny. They invent whole new worlds. This was made aware to me this week. Kat bought some. It's like Play-Doh, but it's pure graphite, and you just get it all over your fucking hands, and like you can use it like a kneaded eraser, but I don't know, it just gets your hands all messy. It seems like the worst of all tools. It's water soluble though.
They're just trying to sell you shit. Like that's it. Like the thing is, okay, listen, like people will invent like this is like that meme of like, like people will do anything but go to therapy. Like, people will do anything except use the right tools for the job they're trying to do. Like, people will use graphite and then be like, oh, I have to, when I'm modeling the forms, I have to change the pitch of the values all the way up, like several levels of exposure, because like, I have to transmute the values and I can't copy the values exactly. And it's like, why can't you copy the values? Oh yeah, because your stupid graphite doesn't go dark enough. You could literally fix that and then save yourself all the trouble of like, well, the shadows are dark, but I can't make them that dark. I have to make them lighter. And when I make them lighter, I have to make the lights lighter. It's like, brother, this is not that hard. Like, this is like, this is the whole point of this is that you have tools that work for you that someone else figured out so that you don't have to, reinvent the wheel. Like, you don't make your own pants,
Everyone really knows the only way to paint skin is to first lay down a wash of transparent red iron oxide mixed with 2 parts alkyd glazing medium. And then...
yeah. That's just people trying to sell you shit. Like, that's like, God, it just, this really just fucking grinds my gears because the problem is that gets you stuck thinking about like technical shit. It gets you stuck thinking about like materials and shit like that, when that stuff is the least important thing. The thoughts that you have, the feelings that you have, the things that you treasure, the things that you want to get out, that is the stuff that matters. And worrying about some stupid little fucking like graphite pencil gets in the way of that. And it's like, you want to see that from people. You want to see like the things that are unique about them. And so your training is something that you should get through as quickly and as easily as possible, right? So in any case, this is never about the graphite user. It is about the graphite itself being an inappropriate tool. But in any case, someone says you don't have to use the whole value range and 9B is quite dark. Sure, but then you have to have several pencils in your hand instead of just having one stick of charcoal and one, Conte crayon. And then you have to press down on it pretty hard, then it's shiny and it's still not as dark as a Conte crayon. So, it's just, there's no real way to completely justify it other than you just like it. Then okay, sure, but beyond that, from like a practical perspective, it just doesn't make any actual like tangible sense. Anyway, in terms of, the drawing here, like I said, the observations are really good. The thinking that you're doing is fantastic, right? You're just, the tool is not helping you, right? So again, choose a tool that loves you back, you know?
Yeah.
All right. So let's go ahead here. Okay, so similarly, this looks like it's done in pen. Uh, you are bold.
Brave.
Academic drawings were not usually done in pen because usually you have to like correct stuff and you have to go back and forth, and it's just too much pressure to do it in pen. There are some that were done in pen. Some Fortuny drawings and stuff like that were actually done with like a literal like dip pen, but they were done over a base of a kind of graphite sketch, and they're pretty small, right? So basically, graphite for the lay-in, and then actual like pen drawing on top in order to get the full value range. So, if you want to go for a pen drawing, you could do that. That'll give you a little bit more of like a range. But oh, this is Bic pen. Okay, yeah. Listen, you know, the thing is that like when you do something with a medium that's that limited, then you have to take it easy on yourself then, because you cannot be too upset if you're like, oh man, like the tilt of the whatever is not what I wanted it to be. Well, it's like then you should have given yourself an out. You should have given yourself a medium that allows you to correct things. But if you just want to do a sketch for fun, then just do it. But in terms of like filling in large areas and modeling them with tone, I know that people do it with pens. Obviously, people make these huge, big pen drawings, but it is a sort of it's more of a parlor trick than it is like an actual, like a sort of practical way of working. What I would encourage you to do is find a medium for whatever the task is that you're doing that works with you, that does not make your task any harder than it has to be. I think that's the big takeaway. Because for example here, again, the actual like drawing of it, like the way that you're like, representing the face and like your sensitivity to these ins and outs of the form, that's really great. That's again, the thinking is solid, right? But the head is not tilted enough, right? This is tilting all the way like that. And you would have another chance at getting it if you use something that you could erase, but you're not. So, you just have to move on. And so if you keep doing that, then you're gonna know what to do, and in your mind you'll be like, oh, like, oh, man, I should have known to do that. I could have done that. But you're always gonna have a lot of like, I should haves, instead of actually doing it, because you're not giving yourself an actual chance at doing that. And frankly, a lot of the times that can be a form of avoidance, where you don't give yourself a chance to do it because you're afraid of succeeding. It's like, so you give yourself an out where you're like, well, I could have done it like, really well, but the pen. And so you want to make it so that you're able to, create these like big changes without it being like a big risk or a big deal. Because otherwise you're just going to like give yourself a bunch of anxiety, and that is, if there's anything to watch out for in drawing, it's that. Like anything that'll make drawing harder for you, that'll make you not want to do it and associate drawing with something that's like painful or like, just like really not enjoyable. That's the stuff that's actual poison, because that will actually stop you from working. As long as you're still doing it and you're having like fun and all that, then you will continue to get closer and closer to your goals. But again, if you choose things that make your life harder, then like, well, your life will be harder. And you'll look at, you're like, oh, I could do this drawing, but man, it's going to take so long to fill this in. You don't want to feel that, right?
And one thing too is that like, it's not that, just me and Ramon are just having fun, and we love to be opinionated. It's not that like, a pen is never useful or that graphite's never useful. It's that like everything has its place, and it's best, especially when you're learning, to use like the things that are going to help your goal as much as possible. So maybe your goal was not focused at all on proportion, was not focused at all on rendering, but you're like trying to like work on like maybe some confidence in your like contour, your blind contour or something like that, or your ability to be able to lay in the full body without any measuring, more intuitively, and still get some big proportional relationships right. Maybe on some like shorter sketches or whatever, or you want to be a comic book inker or something like that, and of course that would be the right tool then. that's where that type of stuff is helpful. And I'm sure graphite has its uses somewhere in the depths of hell as well. But everything has its use. When it comes to like this type of stuff that we're doing here, and that me and Ramon love to preach the virtues of, is like we're giving ourselves just enough time that we don't take too much, but just enough time too that we have the ability to correct ourselves, that we have the ability to look for like the essential like essence of these ideas, and that's what's important about like an academic study, and that's why we like the charcoal and stuff, because it allows you to hit a full value range, it allows you to have incredible accuracy, and it allows you too to erase and fix your mistakes. So it kind of like hits all the categories without any fuss and without holding like 7 pencils or something, and you can work at a large or a small scale. So that's why we do what we do.
Yeah, when you're choosing stuff, you're not always choosing it just because because of personal preference. You're choosing it like a carpenter doesn't use a hammer because of personal preference. They're using it because that is the tool that does the job that they're trying to do, right? And so a lot of times the external circumstances dictate what the tool is, rather than just sort of like choosing just to choose. I will say one thing, just final note on this. Bouguereau did not like using the stump, even though he still did. And that's how he was educated, right? But he did not like using the stump, and he did use graphite all the time. Yeah. Now, how can he get away with this? How does he do that? The drawings are not full value, they are not fully modeled, and they're pretty small. And then he's like using white to augment them. If you don't want drawings that are full value and you want them to be pretty small and you're not going to do full modeling, then go for it. It is entirely possible to do that. It's just not going to look like you're not going to get all of the possibilities. It's a very limited kind of drawing. This is kind of like a haiku kind of drawing. It's like the sort of it's a summary of certain things. It's suggestive, it's evocative, but it's not going to be it's not going to be able to give you the flexibility to do everything in the same way that the Conte crayon and the charcoal and the stump together are going to do. Now again,
and how did Bouguereau learn?
Bouguereau learned by doing, charcoal, stump, and crayon drawings just like everybody else, Yeah. Because again, it's not about personal preference at that point. It's literally just about like what tools will get the job done in the least painful way possible. So anyway, last one here. Really good job on this, like really well organized. The figure, like the way the figure is standing is great. Like it feels planted. The feet are kind of splaying out. It feels like there's weight on the feet. I can see that you went ahead and measured over here. The tilt is what it's supposed to be. I mean, the thing is that like none of this stuff is personal. It's like getting the tilts right, or like matching what you're seeing has nothing to do with you and has nothing to do with talent. It has to do with what are the tools to achieve that goal. What is like the general strategy that people as a group have devised to make this happen, and then you make it happen. And that's it. You are the vessel through which it happens, but it's not really like it's not a thing where it's like certain people can do it and certain people can't. It's more like tying your shoes. If you got the shoelaces there and you know how to make the loops, then it'll happen. Anyway, so here, what I would say is, you can just integrate this a little bit more. So this is just a little bit too sharp, which again is okay to have it like that graphic to start, but just give yourself a chance to just like, make it a little bit more natural. Like everything here is ish, right? It's like straight-ish lines, right? To start out, to make your life easier. 3-ish values to organize it, stuff like that. But it's never, so rigid that it's completely set in stone, right? So you need to have like kind of like, wiggle room around the edges here. Here I would just say like, yeah, there's reflected light here, but it's not that strong. If you squint down, this largely groups together, so save yourself the trouble and just do that. Here, just, broader modeling, simpler, broader, bigger, bigger, better, bolder, just aim for more of that, have some fun with that. So yeah, I would say that's the main thing there. Yeah, good work, everybody.
Yeah. All right, cool. I can jump in here, do a few.
Yeah. Hmm.
I'm just adjusting my own music volume here. Okay, cool. All right, let's see. I grabbed a whole bunch more. I'm doing the dude hour over here. Got a bunch of Germanicus's, and one of this draped lady. I don't know what the statue is, but anyways, I left off with Krista Ann. So let's take a look at this. I think Krista was in my underpaint class. Nice to see you in the Discord. Really nice job. This looks, it's very measured. It's very accurate. Again, like there's a few people I've said this to. The majority of people probably need to do some measurement. But there are a handful of people where it's like you have enough measurement in this that you really probably don't need any more like accuracy for the most part. Like you've done all the measuring that will be beneficial to you here. Like stiffening anything up would be too much, and probably still swinging in the direction of being a little bit too stiff where we are. And where I'll say that comes out is, areas like this, like we do have a change here, and then it gets lighter, and then it gets darker, and then it gets lighter, and then it gets darker, and then it gets lighter over the rib cage, and like all those changes are here. But because we're not like focusing on like a larger read of what we're doing, then it's we start to run into some errors where the values are not perfectly right. Sorry, I just saw that Ramon's camera is like all messed up. I don't know.
Oh, sorry. I unshared my screen. Is that
Oh, that's why. Okay, cool. All right, cool.
Oops.
That's fine. It bumps your camera over in Zoom. So, we have all that change in here, but it's not set into its group, right? So like once we have the overall group set, we can work as much as we want. We can do as many, ups and downs as we want inside of that group. But it only makes sense if it's contained within its group, right? So, for this kind of plate of the top abs here, like the general value is, basically, probably something like this, maybe even a little bit darker. Right? Like if we were to just do actually like even a broader simplification of these abs here, we'd have, or this whole torso rather. This is the large groups that we want to think about, right? This is our big groups. Like this is what's most important and what needs to be set first. And even without any of those ups and downs, there's just like a really nice like feeling of structure here. Like along the left side of the abs here, we get like this dark plane that tells us that you got this kind of big ab ridge to ride over the top of. Same over here, we have like these obliques flaring out, and then it turns into the shadow at the side of the box. And we have all the right ups and downs, but the big groups aren't in there over here. So what we need to do is just make sure before we put those ups and downs in, we get that big definition in. So, don't lose track of this stuff. We'll put in this hard shadow here because that is like a pretty characteristic shape. But then we just got to knock in the whole side here. Because, you have the hard part down. The hardest part of drawing is getting the accuracy right. Getting your measurement, taking your time with that stuff, you have that down. So you're already most of the way there. We just kind of got to like reshift the order of operations, I think. A little bit lighter like this. So this is like kind of this tube that comes around. Just like this. And these top abs are kind of cut in a little bit further, so they're a bit darker. We have losing a little bit of the gesture here too. Like I think this kind of has to sway out a little bit more and then sway back in. So let's grab a little bit of this and pull this over to the side. We don't need to be.
Also, I just saw for a lot of people, these are like their first figure drawings too, like a first full figure drawings, which is really impressive. Like
Yeah, for real.
That's wild.
There's this hard ab here, or this hard shadow here that defines like under the torso. Make sure that the side of the box is nice and defined. And we can kind of carve out these channels on a larger scale before we want to dig into that stuff, because these types of changes in here, let me sample this. This is 68 out of 100. And then it transitions into here, or, that's pretty significant. That's like 80 out of 100. So that's a change of like 2 out of 10. If you're going from like here, let's say like here, 70 to here, it's an 8% difference. I don't know about you, but like at my absolute, like when I'm painting really, really, really good or drawing really, really good, maybe I trust myself to hit like an 8% or 10% difference in value. If I'm like at my peak, most of the time, I don't trust myself to make that type of, really precise modulation of value without first setting up the big groups. I mean, I would never trust myself to do that without setting up the big groups first. It's just not, it's simply, not possible. It's kind of like trying to do a figure drawing without any measuring, right? Where it's like, yeah, you could make it perfectly accurate 1 out of 80 times if you don't measure. But like, why not just put in a little bit of time to measure and you can get it accurate pretty much every single time, at least, within a certain margin. So, like counting, nobody wants to like sit there and count head heights, but it's hell of a lot faster and feels a lot better to do than the alternative, which is just completely like whiffing.
Yeah, there's nothing so demoralizing as like thinking that you're done with something and then being like, oh no, it's too big. Oh no, it's too small. Oh, I gotta redraw it. Like that'll wear you down real quick. Like
Cool. Yeah, I'm gonna move on from this one because I want to keep moving quick. But there's just like these broad planes that we can set up here. Otherwise, I think you did a really nice job, and the accuracy there is there. You're at that like 80-90% mark, and I think you just gotta like reshift your focus a little bit, off of the accuracy stuff and more towards looking for big planes. Stuff can be blocky and still feel really characteristic and really fluid and elegant. It can feel, or in the other way, you can have stuff that's really, super rhythmical, but not have, any structure. Really, it just where you land in that spectrum is up to you, but there is, a certain, level of procedure. I don't even want to call it procedure, but, order of operations. You got to build the walls before you paint them, essentially. You got to build the house before you paint it. And we got, let's see, another figure here. A lot of it's kind of the same stuff where there's a lot of, I think, and I think I remember seeing you say some stuff in chat. First off, nice job. I think you're hitting the values pretty closely on a lot of this stuff. It's more, and the accuracy is good too. Like I think the drawing is good on this. It was nice and characteristic. I think there's like a lot of concern with like getting stuff subtle, getting stuff transitions right. So much so that you start to lose out on getting like the big ideas right because you're so focused on getting the transitions right. So there's just a lot of areas where even if this is like, a little bit sunken in, it's not as dark as it actually is in real life. There's still a lot of areas where we have to knock in those big value groups. We have to. Because otherwise, if we don't put in our big changes, then we're going to start making everything compared to our kind of weak guesses at the beginning, and then things are going to also be off, and then you're going to start comparing to those things that are off, and you're going to drift further and further away. So with painting especially, you have to set up those groups at the beginning. See, like we're searching for a lot of subtlety in here, right? Like you're searching for these serratus muscles and oblique muscles, where here the value is 81 out of 100, and here the value is 79 out of 100. Maybe I said I trust myself to get a 10% value change. I will never, ever trust myself to get a 2% modulation in value correct while mixing it. And at the same time, there's areas here that are flat in value, but there's actually, a good amount of change in curvature here. You don't need to knock that in with a perfectly soft, gradient or transition. We can take your value here. You can lay that in however you want. Let me swap to a hard round. You can lay that in however you want. The application doesn't matter as long as the values are correct, right? So like here we get that nice and light. Here we got to block in that darkness. Same thing here. Just getting a little bit too mushy. And by mushy, I just mean like everything's kind of softly gradating into each other, and we're, shadows in real life are not soft. That's just not even how the theory of light works. Light doesn't fall off in like a really beautiful, subtle way. It stays really, really bright, and then shadows are dark, and it stays nice and bright and bright and bright, and then all of a sudden it drops off the face of a cliff where it loses the energy and it gets dark really quickly. So real life isn't actually all that soft and subtle unless you're like outside and like overcast lighting and you're, in a Bouguereau or Dagnan painting or something. Those guys get away with that, but only because they're so good. But and not on these plasters.
Lighting conditions and all that too. Like it's like a fairly specific scenario where that happens.
Yeah. And it's not direct light on a pure white plaster cast.
Yeah.
So we can have that, and then we could have, we'll say 3 values again, if we even want to use 3 values on this chest, right? Like we have our transition from the darks, and we have maybe like a halftone or something, and then we have our nice, our lights. Same thing for the torso. It's like, okay, we'll have our darks here, and here's our, our shadow, and then we'll have a transition. I'm gonna even make it a little bit, maybe not that dark, but we'll make it a little bit darker just so it doesn't stand out a ton from yours. And even I'll put that in here for the crease of the abs. Likewise here, and probably this whole underside section. And even though this is catching light over here, again, like compare this value over to our actual light, it's much darker. So that's that. Here is our transition tone. So this whole left side gets this. Probably go a little bit darker here. Maybe not so dark. Now here's our transition tone. Right, and then we have our areas where our highlights are hitting. Highlight, again, like we are getting like kind of a more shiny light right in here, but it's still not as light as the top of the head or something like that, right? So we got to keep all this stuff in mind. It's a balancing act, you got a bunch of, plates spinning on your hand, and you can't drop them. But the only way to not drop them is to not hone in and focus on, only one. Kind of just block out all of that. I'm probably a little bit heavy-handed here, but that's just how some of this stuff goes. It's also I almost said that it's like better to be a little bit heavy-handed, and with painting especially, you can kind of come back in later. I'm not sure if that's true. I don't know. What do you think, Ramon?
I think it just kind of depends.
Yeah.
Like, I think that, one of the things that you should do is like figure out, like you were saying, like what the essence of something is and err on the side of that. So, like, if you have shadows that you can tell are really dark, if you're not going to get it right, like if you're going to, quote unquote, like fail or err on the side of making them too dark, not too light, because shadows are darker than lights usually.
Mm.
In the lights, if you're putting something in, err on the side of making it too light. If you find that when you're working, you're not making things clear enough or bold enough, then like overdo it a little bit and then bring it back in. If you find that you're chopping things up too much, then when you put in changes, understate them a little bit and then bring them up as needed. But I think I think with a lot of these things, the less it's about like you as a person, the better. Like there's this weird thing where it's like depersonalizing it is actually kind of helpful because then it's not about like you being a good little artist or a good person or not. It's more about like there's a task, I do the task, I have like a certain mission that I'm on, and you just are much more free to like maneuver and do things without being too hung up on like how it makes you feel. You know what I mean? So you can just do the work, and it's not like it's not like this big taxing existential crisis kind of thing.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm just kind of trying to compare the stuff back up to here, and like, are the legs, in general a little bit darker? Set up those big groups first, just like everybody else. It doesn't matter if you're the most beginner person or, the god of drawing or painting like me or Ramon.
Speak for yourself.
It doesn't matter, like we're all just working on like setting up our big groups and making sure we tackle things in a logical order. There's like always another level of accuracy to hit. There's always another level of like, how smart you can be and how much simplification. Although it's a lot more fun to play the how smart can I be, how broad of an idea can I work from, how can I simplify this stuff down. It's a lot more fun to play that game than it is to play the game of how accurate pinpoint can I be down to my measuring. That gets old pretty quick. But you can achieve kind of those goals by thinking about things from a broader perspective. Yeah. Okay. Let me keep moving on here.
Oh, yeah. For anyone that was asking, there is a Cooper cam on right now.
What's up? Boom. Yeah. Just tiny in the corner. Here we go. I was giving drawing advice in the Discord or material advice in the Discord while we were on your critique.
Oh my god.
Oh, whoops. I was streaming your screen of me watching, of you watching me. I don't have my button set up. I don't have my button set up. I'm clicking on the wrong shit. Drawing. I'm trying to go to drawing. Somebody told me to focus. In the Rogue told me to focus.
Here we go. At least this is more relevant.
I can't help. I'm always on my grind. I tell Ramon, I'm like, all right, man, I'm going to bed tonight. I'm done working for the day. And then Ramon will send me like a screenshot of me in the Discord, like, 3 hours later.
Yeah, someone's gotta do it. That's it. All right, I actually do have to get going.
Oh yeah, we are running right up on your time. Is this cool? Yeah. Well, let me jump over to Zoom here, or yeah, to our wide shot. Oh, let me switch the camera. Oh, I hate Zoom. Okay. Yeah, thanks so much for joining us, Ramon. Here, I'll knock out a couple more after you're gone, but yeah, I appreciate you being here. And if you guys like what you see, I pinned the link to all these references and more in the chat, and me and Ramon did a 22-hour long course that's on sale for one more day together that we just launched. So if you guys are interested in kind of building out those fundamentals and you want to hear Ramon yap for
way too long,
17 of those hours, then absolutely that's the place to be.
Yeah, Jake had to rein me in. All right, well, thank you for having me, everybody. It was, fun, and you guys did great work. I mean, comments and crits and feedback aside, I mean, this is really, really impressive. So, yeah, excited for the next one.
All
And
right, man.
all right, say goodbye, Cooper. Cooper, say bye. Cooper says bye. Meeple says, Meeple's sleeping. Anyway, I'll catch you guys in the next one.
All right, peace.
All right, bye.
All right, boom. Here, I'll keep knocking some of these guys out. I'm not gonna probably be able to finish all of them, just because still a good amount left. Let me look. Where are we at? We're probably like halfway. I think we're like halfway. Guys, we do our best here. We do our best. All right. We're not very good at being. Every time we were like, we'll clean. We'll start, to clear it up a little bit. We'll get quicker. We'll do like 5 at a time. We always just default back to the exact same thing. It's impossible for us. Where am I? So let's see. We are. Oh God, this is the top of the thread. This is the top of the thread here. We're this far down, and then there's. Yeah, I'm gonna get like probably a couple more. Oh God, I wanted you to get a good crit cat from Ramon because I can't do too much here. I don't got much to say. All right, here, let's just keep knocking them out. Let's keep knocking them out. All right, let's get back here. I can't keep hitting this so hard. I can't do the normal 6-hour crit stream just because I'm insanely tired. I've been I'm like at the edge of my sanity here. I've been working about like 70, actual like genuine like 70 hours to 80 hours a week on this website, and not just like fucking around work. Maybe I've done 70-hour weeks where I'm kind of fucking around half of the time. Not super focused. I've been like pure focus, needs to get done in order to finish. It is unfortunately been very difficult, but finally we're at like a good spot with it. And I drew for the first time in like 2 weeks. So I did 45 minutes on my drawing, like a week ago, and that was the first time I had drawn in like a week and a half, and then I didn't draw again for a whole nother week. So finally getting back to some spot, all the long-term plans that I've been talking about are kind of here, which is a weird feeling. So now I'm just excited to kind of start making fun content again. I've been like for like 7 months or so. I think me and Ramon started planning this in like October. So it's 7-8 months. I've just been like, oh, there's stuff coming. Shit came, we busted. And now it's like, damn, I can go back to like having fun. I can go back to just like making reels and stuff like that again, getting back to YouTube. It's hard to just like give 30 seconds each, that's kind of a joke, or like just talk about the major flaws because, it's like, it's hard to be like, well, wrong proportions next, because it's kind of like systemic issues that we talk about. And, we've already covered in these critiques everything that you reference to our course here, everything you need to know about drawing. Like this is like pretty much it. It's measuring, it's like understanding like comparative value, like big form. I think that's pretty much it. Like I don't know, there's not too much else. Give the same critique every time. I've been doing it for 3 hours, can't you tell? All right, let's lock in on the last couple of these at least. Which one is mildew? Wait, let me see. Oh, it's this one. Cool. Yeah, no, I love this one. I did my own drawing of this one. You probably saw a few weeks ago. This is just a great sculpture, and I really like the effect you got here. You didn't like over model the hell out of it, which is nice. You left your lights nice and light, and you left your lights nice and light. And I think you got like kind of that big graphic read of value in there. You probably have some proportional stuff in here. If we check the plumb lines, I plumbed too hard. I'd say pretty damn good accuracy wise. Maybe your head could be a little bit bigger here, but I think missing more than anything else is, again, those big reads. So you have like your light and your dark blocked in, but we're like, again, a little bit too tentative just to compare stuff, right? So this is your lightest point, or like, the top of the head, top of the arm, top of the chest. But this, look at how dark this is compared to this. Why'd you call them the same thing, right? So that's the big idea there. Swap back to my pencil here. So there's just like a general kind of, hey, this is darker than this. Hey, this is the midsection. I can probably corner this in a little bit better. Hey, this is darker than this. This is lighter than this. There's some proportional stuff. This foot's a little big and stuff. That's fine. If this is what you're saying, this is, yeah, we have some reflected lights in here, but the value difference probably isn't quite so much. We don't got to overstate it as much as we are here. We can kind of like, check our plumb line and bring this stuff in. But I like the big read of this stuff. And it just kind of needs that next level pass over the proportions in order to make stuff feel like it's wedging in and out of each other, that there's planes that are, not just facing the light, not facing the light, right? Like you do have some modeling in here, but we have a lot of contrast. So just set your big contrasts first and you're going to get there in a much better way. Okay. I'm going to keep plugging away here. Oh, you eyeballed all that. That's cool. Yeah, there's a lot of people in here. It's like kind of amazing that, they're just trying this stuff out just because of the challenges, just because of the videos. Like I said earlier, I always felt alone in like liking, it's pretty niche. You're never going to like run into someone on the street and be like, oh yeah, I really like, like academic drawing. Like that's not something you're going to run into somebody and share a common interest with. So it really means a lot to me and Ramon just to see people actually taking an interest in this stuff, because we know how, how powerful it is, like how much of an impact it is. It's really kind of an incredible thing. Here I think you have a lot of the vertical measurements right. There's probably just needs to be like checking the head heights and stuff. I'm going to probably just assume, I like your little constructive diagram here. The drawing actually really isn't all that bad. It's not far off. We're just, a little bit scratchy. It might be some of the materials you're with, or definitely this type of stuff could just get simplified a little bit. This is our shadow. You have the shadow value in. I know there's reflected lights or stuff bouncing around, under the light. Like look at how light this is here compared to the shadow here, and then like look how light, the reflected light is in here compared to the shadow here. It's pretty much non-existent, so I'm just gonna call it like it is, and block it in. And like academic drawing is kind of niche, but like at the same time, it's crazy how many people they're paying, in America, they're paying $60,000 a year or whatever, or, all over the world, they're going to these schools and these universities, and they're not really like learning anything about academic drawing at all, even though many of them, especially in America, are like pursuing drawing and painting degrees, and they're not like getting hardly anything, or they're getting like such a small dose. And it doesn't need to be that niche, like it doesn't need to be that niche at all. Like there's so many millions of people that identify as artists that are looking for this stuff, and it's not there. And that, it's really cool to just see people picking it up and, just for fun and trying this stuff out. That's pretty spectacular that, you can even have that amount of impact on the world. So that's just kind of some simplification and big ideas, and then also like counting, I don't know if you are yet or not, but counting head heights, right? So like the top of the head to the bottom of the chin, if we drop that distance down one more time, I can do it digitally. Let me go to black here. Let's drop that distance down one more. Oh, it wasn't moving down at first. I can't see shit. There we go. Right, that's going to take us down to just below where that like rib cage opening is here. And if we do the same on yours, I imagine we're probably maybe at best going to get to like the nipple. So yeah, we're at the nipple height. So that head, now we know it just needs to be a little bit longer, right? A little bit longer, something like that. And we can achieve those proportions a little bit easier just by kind of blocking in and grouping in our shadows into a bigger shape, and just being a little bit more clear with our values. Very good job. Moving on. Topher sent this one. It's great job. I like a lot of the stuff you're doing here. You sent this one in the Discord and I already said something about it. Like you it's funny, you had like a figure that was like essentially this height, and it's funny because like the halfway point on this figure is correct, right? Like if you look at this guy, this lady, and we do that comparison again, like we're gonna hit like the top of her head basically. And if we do that same comparison here on her, like we're gonna get about to the same level. We're like a little bit short maybe, but like clearly though, if we just sit back and we use our eyes, like she's from the Shire. She's a little. I can just end the sentence there. So just because we measure things doesn't mean that like we can not use our eyes too. We can just kind of sit back and just make sure you're like checking the big read, the big picture of this stuff, and like the halfway point is right, but also don't remember just to like check some head heights just to double check these ideas too. So like one head height is going to take us down again to, on her, this is probably going to take us down to around the nipple level or so, probably a little bit lower maybe. Yeah, a little bit lower, bottom of the breasts. One more, we'll take that down to, top of the, pubic area. And this is like the pit of the crotch down here. So like 2.5 heads down to that. You did fix this, so I will ban you from the Discord if this is wrong under the breast. And then still a little bit short here, right? So we know that, sorry, you're getting banned. This should be like the top of the pubic area here. So a little bit more room for like the abdomen will help. So just double check that type of stuff. It sucks to have to do that, but it is pretty easy once you get the hang of it, and it just saves you so much time in the end. She's like a little cherub. She is very cute. And there is some like standardized canon of proportion. Doggo, here, well, let me skip down. Doggo wanted me to look at his. He sent me a DM. I didn't respond to you, Doggo. I'm sorry. I was running around really hard trying to set shit up. Did you send an update? Let me double check. Is this the update? He sent me a DM with something along the lines of, it's bad, but I sent it because I wanted to show everybody that you shouldn't render on top of, poor proportions, and you shouldn't render on top of poor proportions, and, not every drawing always goes well. And I think that's true, and there's something I wanted to say about... let's see, which one is this? Is it this one? The head position doesn't seem to be right. What photo are you working from, Doggo? Something that I wanted to say about these proportions is, I think it's probably this one. first off, it's noble to want to be like, hey, not every drawing goes right. I think that's a good thing. Yeah, Doggo's very good at hitting values. What I wanted to say about proportions is, like, by the way, Doggo's one of my mods. He's very good at drawing. You know, the guy's probably put many more hours into drawing than I even have. You know, probably by a good margin. And he goes to school in a workshop in Greece. Now, the thing about Greece is they have these state universities, and those universities, they still do entrance exams, and they do even some like cast drawing and painting, that type of stuff. Painting from life, like they used to do for entrance exams, back in the 19th century. This is how universities have worked for a very long time, and lots of universities around still, especially in Europe, have these cast drawing entrance exams, even though nowadays they don't actually really teach academic drawing principles, or they don't in the French Academy of Fine Arts nowadays. I can show you guys what's going on there. It's kind of funny. Let me 1 second. Oh, what's the account called? Oh, there's an Instagram account for Instagram. There's an Instagram account for, oh yeah, here it is. Yeah, this is it. For the French Academy of Fine Art, they still do cast drawing or life drawing entrance exams, kind of like the 19th century, but hello? In the 19th century, they had this big hall full of casts that they used to draw from. Oh, come on, the photo's in here. With all of these famous... What search was... How is... Lakeith Stanfield? What am I getting here? What am I channeling? Okay. They had this giant ass hall that was full of, these casts just like this, and it's got this big natural light ceiling, and this was lined with just dozens of casts, full scale figures, just like the ones that we're drawing. And students would go in there and they would draw, and they would take them into the classroom sometimes too to do exams and stuff too. They still do some level of entrance exams at the French Academy of Fine Art, but nowadays they took all of those out of there, and this is the type of stuff that they do. This is the same. No, this is where the ateliers were. Here it is. You can see this is the same room back here with this giant skylight. They divided it into a bunch of cubicles, and they do modern installation art like this. I'm taking my like back. But for some reason, they still do kind of the old school entrance exams, and they do similar stuff in to my understanding at the Athens Academy or University in Greece. And so where Doggo studies at a small workshop is not the actual university, but a lot of these smaller workshops, they help train and prep people to pass these entrance exams. So you see this in China too, where the entire art world revolves around, especially in China, preparing people to pass the entrance exams. That is if you're looking up drawing papers, you'll find examination papers in China, right? You'll see in Taobao and stuff. There's be this province state entrance exam paper for this, and that's how the papers are categorized for student grade stuff. It's what do you do the entrance exams on? And so with Doggo's workshop and with Greece, I think they mostly focus on the 3-hour to the 6-hour poses, and even shorter. So the thing is, if you're working on a full figure in a half of the time or a quarter of the time, if you want to, you just can't get, like, this is what Ramon was talking about earlier. You just can't get the same amount of stuff done in the same amount of time. It's just not possible. You can't do this, right? You can't do this in 3 hours or 6 hours or whatever. It's not possible. It's not built that way. And so if you're trying to do a figure drawing, and when it comes to like measuring and stuff like that, there's only so many corners you can cut if you're trying to speed up. There's only like a few ways that you can do that. It's kind of like, and this is what my teacher Lenny told me once, is that drawing the figure is kind of like hunting. Sometimes you might have all the, neither of us are hunters as far as I'm aware. I've never shot a gun. I don't think he has. But sometimes you have all the time in the world to line up your shot, and you can line up, take as much time as you need, line up the perfect kill shot, shoot it in the heart or whatever, and get a perfect, clean, 100% accurate shot. But sometimes you only have a 5-minute pose or a 10-minute pose in drawing. You only have a few seconds to quick scope the deer or whatever. You're going to miss. There's just no way that you can be sniper accurate on every single shot if you have less time. So the two ways to combat this, right, is one, just you have to measure head heights every time. You can decide where that falls off. If I'm doing a drawing under 20 minutes, I'm not going to sit there counting head heights. It's not worth the time. I'm also going to work at a smaller scale in order to make things more manageable. But the other way of doing that is to kind of standardize things or canonize things. And this is why, like, Watts Atelier, they do all these like really cool looking, I used to think it was like the coolest thing in the world when I was studying there. They do these like really expressive figures. They all look kind of the same. Like all the Watts students kind of have like these same like 5-minute, 7-minute figures. Those guys draw faster than most places, especially in the 5-minute, 7-minute, 10-minute, 15-minute pose. They're really good at that, but that's only possible because they're not trying to be accurate to what they see. They're basically running a standardized canon, a standardized canon of like, these rhythms and systems that get yourself around the body. It's just not possible to hit that level of accuracy without standardizing things, without losing, the observation of what you're looking at. So, for stuff like this, the only thing I can recommend is just counting head heights or learning some sort of like 8-head system, or like, I like the hand length system, or it's 8 heads, but then your hand length goes from your chin to your brow. And then that hand length goes from the bottom of your nose to the pit of your neck, and then another hand length from the pit of your neck to the end of your sternum, and then another hand length, from the end of your sternum to the end of your rib cage, and then another hand length, gets you down, pretty much to this, like your waist level, and then another hand length gets you down to your pit of your crotch, and then another hand length gets you down to, I think it's like 2.5 or so to the, your knee, and then like 2, I think, or maybe it's 2.5 again to the ankle, and then like half a hand or something for the foot, depending on the pose. Like memorizing some sort of standard proportion like that, if you want to speed up, that's one way of going about it. And you can get kind of 90% of the way there with the standard proportions, and then like modify a little bit more. Otherwise, you're just going to miss sometimes. And if you don't mind missing sometimes, then hey, that's totally fine. But that's why, no matter how many academic figures I draw, I'm never gonna not count head heights, because I'll probably just miss if I do that, or at least I'm gonna carry a pretty high chance. And there's that one Jerome quote that I talked about in my plumb line video too. There's that one Jerome quote where an American student comes up to Jerome, and Jerome's like, "Oh, where's your plumb line?" And the student's like, "Oh, a plumb line? I don't need that anymore. I've kind of outgrown the need for it." And Jerome responds, "Well, you might not need it, but I certainly do." And this is like one of the craziest, one of the most prolific teachers of the entire 19th century. So, that's all I got to say. Some fun diatribes. Some fun diatribes. Why do you need head heights? Oh, okay. It's a different angle, ref. Why do you need head heights if you're using your pencil to check angles and proportions? Because the head heights are like the vertical stuff, and your angles, your angles is, your helps you with your width and kind of keeping everything intact. But you can't check angles to get vertical height very well. So it only takes 5 or 10 minutes to count out proportions, make a straight line, count out head heights, make a straight line, then put that many divisions in. That takes 10 minutes, and it's going to save you, either a complete failure of a drawing or hours in the future. Aren't head heights less of a fine art tool? I know. No, everyone's been counting head heights since the beginning of drawing, pretty much. Since Polykleitos was sculpting and devised his idea of the, perfect canon of proportions, people use head heights for that, right? But you can do proportions. Head heights are a factor of proportion, right? Just the same way that the bottom of your feet or your heels to the pit of your crotch is going to be about halfway, and then you take that distance again, gets you to the top of your head, right? Same thing, head height is just a nice, easy way to fit. But yeah, I mean, if you want to make somebody look like somebody, counting head heights is a really easy way to do it, and it's pretty foolproof. I think the head to body ratio is one of the most important things. If it's wrong, it's super visible. Yeah, if you make the head a little bit too big or a little bit too small, everything just gets kind of fucked. Cool, where are we at on this stuff? I am very tired. Ramon was podcasting, and it's really warm in here because I'm streaming, and I have soundproofing on my door, and it's closed, and the PC's revving up like a Ferrari. I don't know, whatever. I was getting sleepy. I was getting heavy-eyed. Oh, I wanted to watch this, though. Wasn't there sound? We have a nice recording of the process by Kat. You do not need to OBS record 12 hours of stuff and then what's happening here? Why is it still going? Is this on your land? Is this what you listen to while drawing this? Is that some sort of soundscape? Wait. My Enron? Enron? No. It's got to be more than one frame in there. Come on, man. We can't be... I shouldn't be the arbiter of handwriting. Yeah. It's very... I like the environmental aspect of it. It's a nice painting. I wish I could give you more critique here. It's kind of outside of my scope. It's a nice painting. I think you did a nice job. I was hoping I could get to you in time because Ramon's a better suited person for it. You got to be careful just raw dog screen recording your whole screen. I don't know how you... How are you just raw... How are you just raw dogging, life like that, man? Where's my audio? Do I not have audio on this one? You don't have podcasts. You're not shit posting in the Discord for like half of the 12 hours. Why is there still mooing in the background? Great job, I guess, with the video editing. That was probably Spanish. I don't think that was Spanish. I don't think that was Spanish. Oh, environment? Hamper Hamper. Yeah, I don't. Oh my god, guys, I'm fucking dying. Oh, yeah, I gotta call it here, guys. What happened in the past few weeks? I wasn't even gonna talk about this on stream because I don't want to like talk about like I don't know like business relationships or whatever on stream. But I'm just sharing my story, okay? And also, I feel good about I feel strongly about this now that I don't mind sharing it. But yeah, I hired this dev for this website, and I don't know what happened, dude. I don't know what happened, but I got led on super hard. I kept hearing that everything was fine, everything was good, and that there was no like no problem, everything was gonna like finish on time, and then I'd get like a week and a half without an update, and then be like, oh, we'll give you an update. I'll give you an update in like 24 hours. And then like 5 days would go by and I'd follow up again. And then, I'd get an update that was substantial enough to like keep me led on. I'd be like, okay, well, it's all good. We still got time. And then like 3 days before we were supposed to launch, we're way past our initial deadline of being done. I got transferred to the site and it was just like 65% done. And I was like, what the fuck? And so I fucking kicked it in. I'd already been like grinding like 10 hours a day. Yeah, ran out of ChatGPT Premium. And I just started watching like, web development tutorials. I mean, it wasn't hand coded, it was Webflow. There was one morning where I woke up 5:45. I started watching Figma and website building tutorials at 6:15. Did that until like 8 a.m., 8:30 a.m. Watched a few hours of tutorials, and then I built the entire blog system on the site, or rebuilt it because it was wrong the first time. And I finished at 11 p.m. and I ate one meal. That's pretty much how most of this shit has been going. So that's why we're a week late. It's because I was rebuilding most of the site. And then over the past week, I updated it and brought it to a much better, more polished level. So, yeah, I'm really optimistic. I'm feeling really good about all this stuff. And I'm really happy about the skills that I've learned in the process. So, that's always the silver lining to this stuff, right? I don't mind. I'm really happy with stuff going forward in the future, too. So, yeah. Tomorrow's my birthday, so I'm going to spend it. I probably want to draw. I'm probably just going to work on this guy for most of the day. Me and Ramon are writing a new article. Oh, Michael asked earlier. It's probably not here. I think it's probably getting late. But he asked earlier if we can talk about barg plates. We're writing an article on, like the history of barg and what they're useful for and all that stuff. Probably going to start working on that tomorrow. So thanks for the birthday wishes. I actually haven't told that. Don't tell famous birthdays. They keep emailing me being like, Jake, we have you on our site. We would really love to know. We added you to our site, famousbirthdays.com. We were wondering if you could let us know what your birthday was. They've emailed me like 3 times, and they've DM'd me on Instagram too. I haven't told them. I haven't leaked. That's the first leak. So, keep it sealed. All right. Famous birthdays will pay you for that information. I'm 25. I'm turning 26. You do not seem like a May birthday. I'm so Taurus. I'm so freaking Taurus, bro. Dago did a nice portrait of me, actually. I can share that one on stream. I am getting kind of unk status, for real, for real. I can't even turn that one down. Where is that portrait? It's a pretty nice painting. It looks like me. My head's like a little longer than it is in real life, but it still has like that nice characteristic look. It looks like me. So thank you for the gift. Spent the last 5 hours obsessing over JC Lanedecker, and I know I'm not going to wake up tomorrow because I'm knee deep into a study. That's the life, man. That's the life. 26 is weird, man. It's like, that's old as fuck, dude. I've lost all my swagger, you know? Yeah, as soon as like, you know, my health recovers from this shit, and you know, like I'm feeling a little stronger, then I can, I really am, and I mean, I'm not going to wait, you know, 2 weeks or whatever. Yeah, I'm really excited to get back to just like making stuff and just making cool stuff and having fun. You know, like I've been working on this stuff because I just wanted to have something under us with me and Ramon. Like there's so many people that ask me how they can start drawing, and I just never had a good answer for them. It's like, well, you can go here, but I don't really like that much. You can go here and they say some nice things, but like I don't like half of it. And it's just like a shitty feeling. Golden Age Graphics, I know that name. And I promise you wake up on the downhill slope of 20s and you're just, fuck. Haha, I just laid there and stared at the ceiling for half an hour. Yeah, it's kind of unk status. I'm kind of like, I'm really into like, I got a shitty almost $200,000 Honda, no, mile, almost 200,000 mile Honda Fit. Just like my hobby right now is like I'm restoring it. I got this stuff to like pull the little dents out, and I'm getting paint filler, and I'm like filling in all the chips and stuff on it. I'm doing it all right, and I'm getting little dents out, and I got floor mats. I'm like really into the floor mats I just got. It's kind of like my unk status right now. That's kind of the shit I'm vibing with. It's kind of like my swag, if you know what I mean. Just something to think about. Just something to think about. It's kind of like my swag. Oh, this song is so good. Just hit this shit raw real quick. Wait, we gotta go back. We don't gotta go back. I actually am an uncle, yeah. I'm never going bald, by the way. I just want to tell you. Have you played My Summer Car? No. Wait, I've heard of that. My Summer Car. I think I'm gonna... Speaking of unk status, is that the game where you drink and drive? Oh, no, it's like a repair thing. I don't fuck with engine work, dude. I don't fuck with getting my hands dirty. I'm kind of a princess. I fucking... What was I talking about? Oh, I'm right. I'm getting old. That's what I was talking about. I am an uncle. I'm losing my shit, man. I'm losing my consciousness. What was I fucking talking about? It was something to do with me being old. So wait, someone's talking about a Honda Jazz. I'm planning on getting a Honda Jazz. Dude, Honda Fits are the best cars ever, dude. Jazz, it's so sick, dude. I listen to too much dementia music, okay? Like, if you're not cruising around in like a 2000, I think the first gen Honda Fit's the best. 27 Honda Fit Sport. This is probably one of the sexiest, manliest cars on earth. Oh. If you're not rolling around in one of these, what the fuck you doing? Look at this shit, man. It doesn't get better than that. I would dead ass choose this. If you offered me a Tesla, I would choose this over a Tesla. Or like a, you know, or you hit the second generation. Sheesh. Dude, it doesn't get better than that. Doesn't get better than a 300 pixel wide photo. That's just my type of vibe, you know what I'm saying? Civic type art. Yeah, go to sleep, Jake. What are you guys talking about? I would choose it. All right, maybe saying I would choose it over a Tesla is a little bit loaded. Toyota RAV4. Toyota RAV4 is kind of one of the best trucks of all time, so I can't even blame you for that if you're going to have a truck. I just don't want a truck. That, or I'm running with like the Honda Beat. Wait, I need one with a person in it. Person. Size. What? Cappuccino. Is that how you spell cappuccino? Oh my god, I'm goated. Size comparison. Why does fucking Brave image search sucks? What is this shit? I'm going to google.com/ I'm gonna do this like a middle schooler. This is how you know only middle schoolers search this way. Pics of girls. Honda Beat size comparison. That's how I used to search in middle school. Yeah. This is the type of vibe I'm on. This is the type of shit I'm on. This type of beat I'm on. Oh, I'd fuck one of these up so hard. Someone driving like a F450 would just run me over and not even notice. That's beside a Miata. It's that type of shit I'm on. You know what I'm saying? What is that? I thought I was in Catter's video again. Those are horses, I suppose. Like, it just doesn't get better than a little gay ass Japanese car. It doesn't. You can't get any further in life than doing that shit. You know what I'm saying? S2000's good. Yeah, S2000's good. But it's overrated, you know? I'm not into the trucks, but I get it. I'm from America, but I'm not into them. What are the horses standing over? It's one of the great mysteries of life. One of the only... Horses are cool, actually. One of the only joys in the world I've had these past few weeks is I have been watching Attack on Titan. I'm almost done. I have like 3 episodes left in Attack on Titan. It's been fucking sick. I'm kind of like Commander Erwin Pild. That's my favorite character. I just want to throw that out there. I'm kind of like Erwin Pild. Just want to throw that out there. I'm kind of like really... I'm kind of plunging deep into the anime. Yeah, good job, guys. Nice. 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 The second one was definitely better. Feels a lot more natural. Nice. Good job. Nice. Good job. Nice. I'll go back to you. Very nice. Very nice. Good job. Actually, you did great, Jacket. This one turned out really well. I think this is probably one of your first figures, I'm pretty sure. My first full figure. I mean, that's fucking crazy, dude. Like, I think, like, this type of stuff is, like, a little bit stiff. But, geez, dude, where you got? That's wild, dude. Oh, you sent another one, too, right? For your first figure, that's wild. This is the funniest shit ever, dude. This guy Hevo bought like fucking expensive $7 a sheet paper that he had to like probably pay extra shipping on top of, or like €4 sheet paper. And this is his first drawing using this like really proper Ingress paper, and I'm zooming in on it and I'm like, this does not look like laid paper. This looks like a smooth watercolor paper or something. So I'm like, why are you using this paper, man? He's drawing on the back side of the sheet. The whole point is that it's ribbed, brother. It's ribbed for your pleasure. And you went to the smooth side, bro. That's funny as hell. Hey, you did a nice figure, and you still got the other side, so you really saved a buck, you know? I love this. This is a drawing by Halil Pasha, I think, something like that. You did a great job on this one, actually. I love this reference. It's a really great drawing. It's so good. And like the hand on the original is like so simple and beautiful. It's really nice. You can probably just do some work to like just unify these shadows into more solid blocks, and keep your lights not so you're like a little bit patchy in these areas. What helps is kind of just like scrubbing with the stump a little bit in, like lightly. Scrubbing, I mean like you go back and forth to kind of distribute the value like this, but you don't have to like dig in super hard. Oh yeah, here's the finished one. Yeah, nice job, man. Really great. This one's really good too. Oh, I thought there was more to that username. Well, I'm in streamer mode, aren't? Oh no, I'm not. Okay, it's just A. Yeah, nice job. Freaking swaggin'. I think we're at like a little bit of an angle here. It's hard to see. I can tell you're stumping. The drawing looks pretty good. I think you could probably use some of the advice about like kind of big general values. This is nice. It's a little bit, you only had like a couple hours. It's not a lot for a couple hours. I think it's small too. So you might be working a little bit small. This is nice. Yeah, the values are feeling good and stuff. Feeling doggo as hell, but probably want to, count your head heights. It's the same thing I'm gonna, I know doggo doesn't do it, but again, to me, it's always worth it. Probably really good vertically here, but just like not, quite, you're a little bit too wide. Yeah, I think the vertical measurements are probably pretty good. So I think, watch the part where Ramon kind of talked about that, like general sketching in, laying in, and how much information you need. There's another one, bro. Oh, it's higher res. Yeah, the values on this photo look better. This is the sketch. Yeah, this is pretty good. It's nice. Very nice. This one reminds me of like I think there's a Jerome drawing that looks a lot like that pose. This is looking nice. I like. Oh, I saw this one. It's a shame you submitted it so late. This is really nice. I like how this figure really feels like it's like actually trapped in the page. It looks great. Like it's really well composed. The drawing here is great. Really good, actually. Might be some areas where like relying on that outline like a little bit too much, but in general, yeah, it's pretty solid. Toko did a great job. More of these people hogging up my feed. Sanguine. It's a nice little sketch. Don't let Ramon see that. Oh, sanguine and water. Okay, yeah. Susan! Male pregnancy. Yeah, man, I'm super impressed, like I said, with everyone else. How much lower can I get in this chair? I'm super impressed with everyone. I think everybody's doing real good. So I'll be back. I'll be back stronger than ever. I'll be back and stronger than ever. Okay? I'm like a titan. All right? You gotta kill me. You gotta get me at the nape of the neck. All right. Much love and kisses. I'll be back soon. I was supposed to hit stop streaming, but I hit stop recording.